Good afternoon, councillors. Those in attendance, standing room only today, being the last meeting of the year. It's great to see you all here and engaging with your local council and local community, and those who are tuning in at home. So in opening today's meeting at 1 p.m, we respectfully acknowledge the original and ongoing owners of this unceded land, the Palawa people. Thank you. In opening the meeting, we have some apologies here today as well. Apologies from Councillor McMahon, Councillor Dawkins and Councillor Pentridge. Thank you. Item 2. I would like to make a little mayoral acknowledgement today. Councillor Dr. Raze. So Councillor Dr. Raze has recently been appointed as a clinical professor within the Tasmanian School of Medicine, University of Tasmania. Councillor Professor Raze, after working for 15 years in England and 1 year in Sydney, has spent the last 27 years working as a general physician and geriatric director of the Memory Disorders Clinic and Dementia Research Centre at the Launceston General Hospital. Professor Raze his research has contributed greatly to the increasing and understanding of risk factors, diagnosis and treatment of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. His research was one of the first to report a link between the metabolic syndrome and Alzheimer's disease, improvement in cognitive and physical functioning following exercise in Alzheimer's disease, and the high incidence of normal pressure. Dr. Raze, you set me up with the mischief with some of these words. Hydrocephalus. I like my way better. And effectiveness of shunt surgery on cognition, balance and walking. Professor Raze also provided education to the community through regular public lectures on the importance of early assessment, diagnosis and treatment of memory disorders and dementia. Over the last 2 years, Professor Raze has given 22 public presentations around Tasmania. It is a real heartfelt congratulations, Professor Councillor Raze. Moving forward to number 3 on the agenda, which is declarations of interest. So a councillor must declare any interest that a councillor has in a matter before any decision on that matter commences. Declarations of interest. Deputy Mayor. President at 16.1. Any further declarations of interest? There being none, we'll move forward to the confirmation of minutes. The recommendation is that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the City of Launceston Council held on the 30th of November be confirmed as true and correct record. Somebody to move? Councillor Palmer. Second to Councillor Harris. All of those in favour? That is all councillors present. The motion is carried. 5. Council workshops. 5.1. Council workshop report 30th of November to the 7th of December. The recommendation is that council notes the council workshops conducted and attended since the last council meeting for the purposes of the Road Safety Centre, expressions of interest, 56 Frederick Street, the budget update, Dogs Home Tasmania, Northern Tasmania Waste Management Group, Launceston Recovery Planning. Somebody to move. Councillor Gibson, a seconder. Councillor Britton. Councillor Gibson, would you like to speak to any? Councillor Britton, any other further comments around conducted workshops? There being none, Councillor Gibson to close. No, putting it to the vote then. All of those in favour? All councillors present, the motion is carried. Number 6, we don't have any councillors' leave of absence applications identified as a part of today's agenda. So moving forward to community reports, in which we do have today from Joanne Dean as a part of the Northern Schools program, the 24 Carrot Gardens. Thank you. Great. So Joanne, we'll just move to the microphone there. Councillor Britton, any required assistance? Seems all right. Great, thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me along today, Councillor Gibson. Yes, you can hear me. So I'm here representing the 24 Carat Garden program. We have been active in Tasmania for 10 years now. Most of our work has happened in southern Tasmania. You might have heard of us originally being a program initiated by Kirsha Kacelli. Sure. Thank you. Often people make the link of Kirsha Kacelli with David Walsh, who is recognised as a major contributor within Tasmania through the arts sector. But the 24 Carat Garden program is something a little bit different. What we're doing here in northern Tasmania, I'm Jodine, I'm the program manager for the 24 Carat Garden program, and we support food growing in low socioeconomic areas all around Tasmania. Here in Launceston, we have a presence at East Tamar Primary School and also Ravenswood Heights Primary School. We're really excited because we've just completed a build at East Tamar Primary School at Mayfield, where we work closely with the University of Tasmania. The architecture and design students help to design the space in consultation with the students and the staff of what they would like to see within that garden. So we have an outdoor learning space, we have a large area for growing food, and you'll hear more about that when school begins next year. We are currently setting up a hub at Ravenswood. We are really thankful that the Department of Education, Children and Youth have provided us a peppercorn lease to develop that site. Today, while I'm standing here, the team from Hobart are sitting around a table at Ravenswood discussing what might be best for learning in that space. There's going to be a huge kitchen. There's going to be an amazing garden. And it's all about sharing skills within the school community, which then are shared into community. So people are learning how to grow food, how to gather, how to cook, and everyone sits down together and enjoys a meal. Even in the short time that I've been here, within 2 years, I've been able to see the difference, and it's really encouraging. Students are coming forward and telling their stories of where they have grown the food from seed in the garden, brought that into the kitchen, learning skills beside well-qualified chefs, sharing that with the whole school community, and also after-school programs for the community to be able to experience that. We work closely with the Farm Project that we all know about through the Northern Suburbs Community Centre. I have given presentations within the learning programs, and likewise, it's a reciprocal arrangement. We all work together where we are sharing skills in community for people to be able to grow their own food as a way to be able to address the cost of living crisis that we are experiencing around us. But knowing that everyone is working towards a positive result and we're all doing the best we can, and we all have skills to share, and we're all looking for ways to be able to develop that as best we can. So on that note, thank you for inviting me along. We look forward to working closely with Council into the future. We're 2 years into the program. Some of the discussions today were based on our projections 20 years into the future, because we see a really positive future here of being able to share part of the wonderfulness of Launceston when we consider that being the city of gastronomy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joanne. Yeah, thank you for coming in and sharing what work you're doing in our community for the betterment of the community. It's great. Thank you. Moving through to agenda item number 8, public question time. 8.1, public questions on notice. 8.1.1, we'll see Jim Dickinson's question around the Albert Hall. 8.1.2, we'll see Ross and Ives's around defibrillators at the Cataract Gorge. And that is from last meeting. So looking to 8.2, public questions without notice, noting that the rules and regulations are displayed and available upon entry. You may ask a total of 3 questions each. Mr. Baines, having moved to the microphone. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a slight preamble before my actual question. It goes like this. I've been giving serious thought to the 3 R's in relationship to councils and our education department. We need to make that 4 R's. Let's look at councils first. Rates, roads, rubbish is the current mantra. So let's add recycle, not cans and bottles, etc., because the 10-cent deposit scheme will take care of them when it gets going. However, let's check out demolition sites on councils. DAs, for example. The City of Launceston has 5 of these in less than a month, demolition sites. Other councils, I've no idea, but I expect they've got some too. Next is education, reading, writing, arithmetic. Now add recycle to the mix. How about rewards for the cleanest classroom at school? Maybe McDonald's, KFC and Hungry Jack's will provide containers for this. Naturally, with their own logo on, very prominently, as they are big contributors to this problem. And maybe a prize for the cleaners. We all need an incentive sometimes. Train our children to bin it, not throw it. Then this problem won't exist in our clean green future. The 4 R's are the key. Will this council promote and run with this proposal, and to what degree?
Thank you, Mr. Baines. That sounds like some really great ideas and initiatives in there, and council, of course, is always open to suggestions from the community, and we can definitely take that onto the table and have a look around how we might be able to do some advocacy and maybe some incentivising around those sorts of initiatives in schools. Of course, comes down to the state and the actual education department itself. But yeah, we can absolutely have a look at that.
Thank you. Second question. Apparently, council has acted illegally when a number of parking fines were imposed. Council was advised of this, apparently. Will council advise ratepayers of a possible outcome in order to sidestep a freedom of information order from ratepayers?
Thank you, Mr. Baines. I think I acknowledge the allegations that you're referring to, and I'll just delegate this one to the acting CEO for the further information around where we're at with processes when it comes to our infringement notices.
So I'm not aware of any parking infringements that have been illegally issued, and if we were aware, then of course we would revoke them. At the current point in time, I would say if individuals have a concern with their infringement, then they're welcome to come in and contact customer service, and we've got a process to work through that on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you. Apparently, ratepayers look like losing a couple of $1 million on a future sale of the Birchall's property. As there is strong likelihood of other losses against this property, is there a likelihood of there being a thorough independent audit of all costs associated with this financial disaster?
Thanks, Mr. Baines. So in relation to the $2 million difference, it's around what is continuing to be retained by the council in the proposal. We haven't signed any documentation around this at the moment, but if we were looking to do the development as it's looking through the plans at the moment, the thoroughfares, amenities as in toilets and so forth, the ability to have some of the retained office space perhaps will go into looking at where that $2 million comes from. So it's not necessarily a financial difference, but it's a written down on the books sort of $2 million investment back into the community, not necessarily a loss.
Mm.
So if we were to sell the building...
Maybe my math isn't what it used to be. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Ron. Further questions without notice? Mr. Dickinson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jim Dickinson, 261 West Tamer Road. My question follows on from what you mentioned a moment ago about questions on notice. Before I get to that, if I can have a couple of minutes of preamble, it's all related to the Albert Hall and it's all related to question time. So back in June, you entered into a contract with Shape Builders. It seems to me that that contract doesn't have a start or finish date. So I've asked this question 2 or 3 times. When is the start date and when is the project going to be finished? And I'll read it out. I get start dates maybe next month, September, builder currently on the site in October, and site establishment works, that's in inverted commas, have progressed to December, which is now. That's all pretty random stuff. And as for when the project might finish, it's October 24, quarter 4, 2024, or due for completion in late 2024. So I would have thought that those dates would be precisely in a contract. So they're not in there. So is this a big secret, or what's the problem with having the dates in the contract?
Sure. So I can confirm that production is underway at the moment. There is work going on at the moment. It has started, but I will delegate to the acting CEO to speak further to the timeline.
That's not true, Mr. Mayor.
Well, the acting CEO. Let's let the acting CEO to reference the question.
So the contractors are on site and works have started. I'm going to say you've followed this project from the start, Mr. Dickinson, and so you would understand that there's multiple stages to this. So the works that SHAPE are doing are one part of the works, and that's one contract, of which there are timeframes in which and schedules they need to deliver on, but that's not all the works as part of the Albert Hall redevelopment. So that's why we're intending to finish in quarter 24, but as you would understand, there's some stages in that in terms of upgrades inside the hall that aren't part of the current contract with SHAPE. And we're yet to work through the exact details of how those are delivered.
Your final comment, yet to work through, almost every question has a yet to work through answer. But the point is, SHAPE is not on site at the moment, are they?
So it's question 2.
No, it's not question 2. It's from...
No, you're asking a question. This is question 2. If you want that answer question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Acting CEO around the provider.
SHAPE have staff on site.
Sorry?
SHAPE have staff on site.
Could go on and say, what are they doing? But they've even got a fence up around the site yet. That was started a week ago, and now it's stopped. So what is SHAPE doing on site at the moment then? You said they were on site. What are they doing?
Well, I don't think, Mr. Dickens, we can directly go in and say exactly what they're doing there. They're working through the project as they've been employed to do.
Yeah. Anyway, the point is, I read out 4 or 5 different answers to when the project may start and when it may finish, from different people, from different staff members. Surely there is one person that would know all this and would answer that particular question.
So, Mr. Dickinson, I would just refer back to what Acting CEO said, that it's due for completion in the last quarter of 2024, and that there are other stages that will be delivered that will have impact on the timeframe as to the very specific parts of dates and so forth. Now, Mr. Dickens, that's the 3 questions that you have asked.
So further to that then, has a project manager been appointed? Is there a supervisor? Is there a project team for the development of the Albert Hall?
Yes, there's an external project manager that's been appointed for the project that has been with the project since the initiation of the project.
Yeah, I'll have to...
No, thank you, Mr. Dickens. That is your allocation now.
No, I said before I started, if you give me a couple of...
I think we've been quite lenient, Mr. Dickens. If you don't mind, please have your seat again.
The project's been going on for 1.5 years.
Mr. Dickens, please, I would ask you to please...
I've taken 2.5 minutes, so I mean, it's...
No, Mr. Dickens, you have a chance to ask 3 questions. I had the same conversation with Mr. Smith last week. We have checked. The Act does say that you can have 15 minutes unless it is provided by that local council to have 3 questions, in which we have stated that that is our position.
So in actual fact, yeah. So you've answered nothing. You're still saying it may be finished towards the end of next year. There are 2 or 3 conflicting
Mr. Dickens, I feel like we have been very coherent in our conversations that we've just had then. I've allowed you to have a bit more of a discussion than just asking your questions, but I do ask for you to please take a seat and allow further questions without notice to take place.
Right, well, I'm referring now to the question.
Mr. Dickens, I will have to give you a warning that if you do continue, I will have to have you removed.
Yeah, well, have me
Okay,
removed.
could somebody please remove Mr. Dickens from the council chambers?
Okay, I'll get my stuff. Yep, I'll
Yeah,
get my stuff.
that's okay. Thank you, Mr. Baines.
I just hope that the councillors have read the answers to the questions on notice that are in here. They're total rubbish, okay? Total rubbish. I hope you're all listening.
We're listening, Mr. Baines. Thank you. Any further questions without notice? Mr. Smith?
Robin Smith, I have noticed on the agenda that it doesn't have mention of petitions. How do we present? It always used to have on the agenda each week a section that was for petitions that were presented to council.
I would just assume that with the item being empty, that there have been no petitions. Yeah, there's no petitions that have been submitted as a part of this agenda.
So to present a petition in that same agenda item, if we have a petition, I have one here from traders in the Brisbane Street Mall, following on from last week's question.
Yep.
This is to review and stop the council's morning leaf blowing the Brisbane Street Mall as it causes
Sure.
dust, etc. There's 17 businesses signed. How do we give that to the
So
meeting?
there is a process. So if that is submitted through, we're just flicking through for some advice there, but that petitions are submitted to council. It'll come to councils for workshop. We'll go over the information, and then that will come through council meeting and be officially accepted.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Thank you for doing the work for that. I did ask if
Indeed.
you would have to do that. Great.
No other advice on that? Thank you. Question I have...
Pardon? Yeah, just if you provide it to myself or the acting CEO.
Thank you. In the past, we've had issues that have reoccurred with graffiti tags around the city now. Ordinarily, it's business or property owners that are to remove graffitis. The problem I came up with in the past with council, they will remove in certain circumstances graffiti from private property if it's an offensive word. If the landlord isn't prepared to do it. Sometimes there are landlords that won't for various reasons. The occasion I experienced in the past was swastikas.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, that wasn't something, and I've brought this up a number of times with council, they've reappeared around the city. Council doesn't have a policy, but it has a guideline that it will, at its expense, go to the trouble of removing, say, offensive acronyms. There's one around Launceston refers to the police, and there's also a swastika style that's appeared recently. And when I asked if the council would do it, they said no, they won't, because a swastika is not an offensive word, it's a symbol. And an acronym, a three-letter acronym, is not a word. It is, of course, an acronym. Is it something council could look at again in the light that there are swastikas appearing and a number of offensive tags?
I'm of the understanding, Mr. Smith, that we do actively, we work, having just had the Morrow Lytton in the mall, working with our Jewish community around the removal as quickly as possible when these are identified. But if you would like a further policy response to that, acting CEO, around council's view on swastikas and offensive symbols.
Obviously, the Mayor's words are correct. We do find they are offensive, and we do remove them. It's obviously we don't have any legislative power to remove them from private property, but we have, with consent of the owners, remove them where we can.
Just a point, I did say a guideline, not a policy. The council has a guideline on removing offensive words, but a symbol or an acronym wasn't included. And that was the experience I had with the swastikas I tried to get rid of. Thank you. Brisbane Street Mall, I mentioned, I didn't say my name is Robin Smith. I work in the Brisbane Street Mall, Cafe Coffee Republic. I'm interested in the mall. I did mention annual washdown this year. We don't seem to have got that, a good annual cleaning of the mall with a high-pressure hose. We didn't get that. And there's a number of issues, and I realised when you said you believe that City Prom, which actually doesn't exist, it's now called Launceston Central, isn't an advocacy body for us as traders, so we don't approach them. They're only interested in marketing. So about day-to-day things, like in the mall, the clock is inaccurate. It's not terribly pretty as opposed to the other 5 areas the council decorates with, notwithstanding the Christmas tree, flowers. For example, there was an article in the paper where council installed 3,000 of a plant in the city, some 700 in Civic Square. It was an average about 700 in the other precincts, but the mall got 80 of these plants. So it doesn't seem to get its fair share, notwithstanding the Christmas tree. Is that something council could look at getting back to closer attention to the mall, cleansing, those sort of things, please?
Thank you, Mr. Smith, and thank you for your first-hand knowledge and experience working in there every day. We do appreciate your advocacy for the CBD and particularly the Brisbane Street Mall. Yep, we can absolutely have a look at our timelines and our schedules around cleansing and so forth, and around what opportunities there are in the mall for further urban greening and further implementation of plants and living areas.
Thank you very much. This is, normally I concentrate only on my area, but this has been brought to my attention. There used to be a seat at the taxi rank in George Street. It has been replaced with a decorative, ornamental, interpretive sewer pipe. You're familiar with the object? Intended to be a seat. Unfortunately, it ends up too high. It's not practical as a seat because it's over 1 metre high. So, in effect, it doesn't work as a seat. I know it was intended to be a rest against seat.
Lean against.
People actually want a seat with a flat part that's a take home. Is that something council could look at installing?
Absolutely, we can have a look into it and look around our strategies and around our City Hut projects and so forth.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Further questions without notice? There being none, we'll into the agenda around agenda item number 9. Deputations 9.1, the Youth Advisory Group Annual Report.
Thank you, councillors. Before I begin, I would like to apologise on behalf of Maddie Hansel, who is unable to attend. I believe she has some business with school. The City of Launceston Youth Advisory Group kicked off another year of youth representation in the community by convening a meeting on the 31st of January 2023, in which over 60 Launceston youth participated. Since then, YAG has undertaken discussions about potential projects to include for the year and possibly for the coming years too. A key change that YAG has instigated is the chairing of meetings by its members based on their chosen topic of interest. This decision demonstrates the potential of YAG members to lead projects and collaborate with one another with the support of the Community Development Officer, youth and councillors. In April, for the first time in YAG's history, YAG was included in the roster of official attendees at the Anzac Memorial Service. YAG representatives marched and laid a wreath on the cenotaph after the service. Another prominent agenda item for YAG this year has been rebranding. In May, the group participated in a brief marketing workshop with the aim of introducing the group basics, marketing and the different strategies that can be used by the group for future projects. After being advised about the available marketing tools for YAG, the group revamped its school funding program by changing the old name of Student Executive Equity Development, or SEED funding, to Schools Training and Empowerment Program, STEP funding. The group also looked at other aspects of the funding program, including the application process, conditions, assessment, monitoring and promotion in a bid to elevate and improve the current program. In addition, preliminary plans for YAG's involvement in Mental Health Week in October were tabled at one of the meetings in May. In the same month, the Music in the Mall event was held, proudly sponsored by the Council, YAG and Launceston City Central. It featured young local music performers who showcased their talents in front of an audience from different backgrounds in the Brisbane Street Mall. In June, 3 YAG members travelled to Hobart to attend the Tasmanian Youth Forum, which focused on mental wellbeing and resilience. The participants contributed to table discussions and activities which involved answering questions about what to keep, change, and create. In the same month, YAG started looking at the prospects and utilisation of social media as the main tool to execute their rebranding goal, reach the wider community, launch future projects, and promote the people behind YAG and their works. The group agreed to approach rebranding by employing an online facelift on its Facebook and Instagram pages and building momentum on the social media first prior to launching major projects. As such, the group penned a social media connection plan in preparation for the official use of social media in their future endeavours. In July, YAG greenlit a project proposal that aimed to relaunch and make Young Local Legends campaign a project from 2020. The group finalised the fundamental aspects of the project. It will go full steam ahead, as well as other projects in the pipeline once its social media arm is up and running. August and September saw more progress with social media plans and approval of the social connection and style guide. The YAG Facebook page was reignited early October with the aim of at least one post a week in the future. As the year approached October, it was becoming apparent that external commitments were taking precedence for yet many YAG members. As exams loomed and decisions about futures needed to be made, as a group, it was voted that a modification of the YAG calendar could result in better engagement with a longer break during October exams and reconvening in early December to plan for 2024. YAG underscores the role of youth in the local political landscape by expressing their growing interest in becoming more involved in policy makings in terms of youth representation and advising on matters concerning young people at local level. The projects undertaken this year will hopefully and ideally leave a legacy that will be carried over to the coming years by future members. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Charles, and thanks, Lockie, for coming along as a part of the group as well, and thank you to Officer Stephanie for the work and the amount of effort and time that is put into ensuring that our youth have a voice and that they are able to implement it and to really have influence. So it's a really great initiative, so thank you for the work that you're doing there. Moving forward through now to agenda item number 10, which is Planning Authority. So under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act of 1993, Council acts as a planning authority in regards to items included in the Agenda 10, which is Planning Authority. Starting with 10.1, we have Hillary Street, St Leonard's. So community meeting and entertainment, construction and use of a place of worship. Before we get to the recommendation, do we have any speakers from the public? Sure. Okay. Yeah, just step up to the microphone, just name and address. Oh yeah, I've got it here actually.
Good afternoon, Mr Mayor, planners, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Natalie Bristow of 12 to 14 St John Street, Launceston. I'm here today to speak on behalf of Wilkin Design and our clients for the recommendation of the place of assembly at 29 Hillary Street. This is an unusual proposal, as I'm sure you're all aware, and understand that typically places of worship don't tend to blend in their environment. Instead, they add an interest and wonder to the neighbourhood. The plan and form of the building, the number of domes and their colour have symbolic meaning to Russian Orthodox parishioners. Working on this development has been fascinating and we have learnt a lot. I believe the shape of the onion dome symbolised the flame of a candle. There are so many interesting things when you broaden your understanding and knowledge of new and unusual things. We believe the proposal, although contrasting in nature to what already exists in the area, does not cause unreasonable loss of amenity on adjoining properties, and the setback is some distance from boundaries of the residential lots in the area. It has been located centrally on site to assist with reducing the apparent scale and bulk of the massing. In addition to this is a small Russian Orthodox church for a small number of parishioners. They are quiet people, and the church will be utilised for religious and cultural activities, including Sunday service and Bible studies. It does not pose a threat of noise or any other activity on its neighbours. We previously had a DA approved for this project in this exact form, but It recently lapsed and we are reapplying for the same proposal. I hope you will consider this and the benefits of the proposal for a small group of parishioners within our community and support it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. There we go. Oh, another one. Okay. Further speaker, Alira.
Hi, my name's Alira. I live in Himalaya Court in St Leonard's, which is just around the corner from 29 Hillary Street. Unfortunately, myself and quite a large amount of the community is not for the church being built. We have quite a few reasons as to why we're not very happy with it going in. It's not necessarily that it is a church, it's heavily the scale of the building. It's 20 metres high is the proposed plan. Most of the houses in the area are 3.5 metres high. For myself, my neighbours and majority of our estate area, this church will actually block our view. So one of the reasons we decided to build in the area where we have a beautiful view of Launceston, Norwood, Newstead. We can actually see the gorge. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful sunsets and everything. Unfortunately, this church will block that view. For myself and others, we're quite concerned about the loss in value of our properties. For us, that view is a selling point. It is also one of the reasons we built there. So unfortunately, losing that it's quite upsetting. We've also got concerns in relation to Hillary Street itself. It is quite a narrow street. If there are cars parked on either side of the street, only just one car can fit through. With the plans in place, it is said to seat 40 to 50 people with 9 parking spaces. This is going to result in on-street parking, which that street just can't accommodate for. There are a lot of people in the area that are concerned with access to their properties, and also the restricted access of that street already is quite difficult. We have a community Facebook page, and I went on there and said that I was attending the meeting, and if anybody was for or against, please let me know and I will bring up their concerns, which I have written here that I'm happy to present. I have only used their first name just for privacy reasons. I'm not sure if they were comfortable with it being shared. But we are all sort of in the same boat with just the aesthetics. I understand the point was made that it is quite a standout building. Unfortunately, it just does not fit with our area. All the new houses that are built are quite similar looking, and this is going to stand out quite predominantly. Concerns for the height, concerns for the parking, and then again, concerns for the noises as well that will come with it. I did have somebody as well comment on here. He lives around 287 St Leonard's Road, and he's a bit concerned that to gain extra access to the property, there might be requests to use his block of land to create a second entrance into the church. I'm not sure if that's going ahead, but he was just curious about that. So from myself and many others who have agreed to sign a petition if it was to go ahead, to have it not go ahead, quite a few of the community is very against it, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Lara.
I'll bring that up.
We have a further speaker, Peter. He's just out in the other room with the child. Yep.
Hello, Peter Elliott, 27 Hillary Street. So I'm right at the edge of the development. I'm not so much against it, but what I would like to see is I don't want it to become a Ravenswood Sunny Hill, where it's going to be off the side of my house is a road, then it will be a public road if only the church is there. It is a public road. Surely it must be sealed. The other thing I'm concerned about is it becoming the St Leonard's tip, like Ravenswood near the tennis pub there. Because if you've got access there, you've got a road. If it's only being used 2 days a week, like they're saying, people are going to use it for a drag strip because nice round road. I hope it's going to be sealed. I think that should be part of the thing. And the lawns, when you guys went up there, I reckon they mowed them, but they were at least that high. Now, that is a fire hazard. We shouldn't have to go to council and say, hey, this grass is high. Councillors should be doing their job, and when they see these properties with high grass, not us reporting them reporting them, doing their job. That's what councillors are for, to look after the ratepayers. The other thing I'd like, if it is just going to be the church like they say, there is things for a subdivision. I asked them to be sent to me by email. They said I could come in and see the concept plans, which I haven't seen. I believe they're running straight up. If it's right, it won't be too bad, but I still believe the two car parks where they only have to build one, I think they should be made to build two, because 40 people, they're going to need more than 9 spaces, I'm sorry. What happens if there's a funeral, a wedding, a baptism? I'm sure they have those. And with the expanse of the cost it would be costing this guy, he will want to expand his congregation. I mean, he's not going to keep it at 40. If you're spending 2 or 3 million on a property, you'd want to expand your congregation. You don't have to be rocket science or businessman. You want to encourage more people to think. So I'm not so much against it. If it is just a church, I'd like a gate on it so it stops people going in and out of it. And for the grassed area, like the picture shows, it all should be mowed like grass right around it, which I don't believe it will be. Well, that's really about all I've got to say. I'm not so much against it as long as it's built exactly like it says in the picture and not different. And I think I just really want to make sure we're not creating a problem by having the road open as a private road, because that's what it will be, I've been told. It'll be a private road, not come for that other road. And the footpath will stop and there's no footpath, so yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Elliott.
Thank you.
We've heard some of those concerns, so I would imagine that some of those will be addressed in the discussion around the recommendation. Thank you. Do we have any further representations for or against? Okay, there being none, we will move to the officer's recommendation, which is that in accordance with section 51 and 57 of the Land Use Planning Act and Approvals Act of 1993 and the Tasmanian Planning Scheme, Launceston, a permit be granted for community meeting and entertainment, construction and use of a place of worship at 29 Hillary Street, St Leonards, subject to the agenda published conditions. Do I have somebody to move? Deputy Mayor to move? A seconder, Councillor Harris. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor, and thank you for the commentary from all the parties who spoke today and acknowledge something like this always is going to create some concern within the communities. But if you actually look at it, and again, we have to assess this based on the planning legislation and a couple of matters that were mentioned, like view, as much as I appreciate how important that is to people, and loss of value aren't something that's contemplated under the planning scheme unless they are amenity, and they haven't been defined to be amenity in most of the cases that I've been involved in. If you look at the standards requiring planning discretion, in the footnote, there are 4 that require it. One is the discretionary use, which basically says you just, to become in a residential area, you need to go through discretionary use to be something other than a residence. Our officers have reviewed that and looked at the property and said, based on the nature of what it is, there are performance criteria that need to be looked at, and there are 5. The intensity and scale of the use, the emissions generated by the use, the type and intensity of traffic generated by the use, the impact of the character on the area, and the need for the use in that location. And that's all in relation to unreasonable loss of amenity. When you look through and look at most of those, they all fit the character quite well. The only area is the impact of the character on the area And I guess the applicant contended, although the character of the development somewhat contrasts with the existing nature of the area, it has been located centrally on the site to assist with the reducing of its apparent scale, bulk and massing. It could be argued that the architecture could provide interest to the surrounding area and diversify the streetscape and form. There are several examples of that within the greater Launceston area where a church is integrated in with the residential area in general. And I guess our officers have seen that as being reasonable in relation to the amenity, so that's probably the only area of contention that I can see with it. The second item that is mentioned is non-dwelling development and looking to the scale of the building, and I guess I think somebody made the comment it's 20 metres high, and that's really through the spire is the large part of that. The bulk of the building is at 10 metres, which is about the size of a two-storey house. So as a consequence of that, they're the only issues that I think that are relevant in regards to whether it fits into that category or not, and I believe that that has been adequately discussed and agreed by officers. And the other ones were car parking numbers and bicycle parking numbers, which has been conditioned to ensure that the number of car parking and bikes are now conditioned to meet the required numbers, which were less in the original application. So as a consequence of that, there aren't many things that I believe that we can actually argue against in regards to the development. I appreciate the views and I certainly take sense of that. Having a view myself, losing it is something that we all hate to do, but unfortunately where you build next to a vacant block of land, the opportunity for somebody to build something on it is likely to happen at some stage into the future. And therefore, as a consequence of that, it's quite appropriate that somebody builds something there, whether it be a house or whether it be a church. In this case, something at some future date would have been designed to be there. I note the comments in regard to another potential road off St Leonard's Road. That's not part of this application and therefore need to be dealt with separately should that be something that's requested at some future date.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Harris with a question before speaking.
If I can. Just a question regarding the access road, I'll call it, from Hillary Street. Is that to be a private gated road, as I think Peter Elliott suggested, or is it in fact to be a public road that would in fact be open at all times to help facilitate what had previously been foreshadowed as a residential development around the church? Is anyone able to answer that? That's where you are. Sorry. That's all right.
Thank you for your question, Councillor. It's our understanding that it's a private road. There's no gate proposed. Our infrastructure team have put some conditions on the permit with regards to the quality and the requirement standards that it's actually to be built to, but it's I understand, a private road into the facility. That's our understanding. It's on the plan as a private sealed road.
Right, thank you. So it would be sealed to sufficiently be perhaps a council-maintained road if a subdivision were to go ahead? Is that the sort of standard we're aiming for, or is it just a sealed driveway?
Again, the subdivision is not included in this application, so if the subdivision was going to happen in the future, that would need to meet those standards at that time. And would need, to service that subdivision should it occur. But for this application, it's a private sealed road. There's no gate. So that's the standards of which it's going to be to this development. Noting again that there are conditions on there that infrastructure have placed on the permit for us.
Yeah, and I guess the other question that might follow from that is, whilst we have amended the development application to include 12 parking spots as designed by the area of the church as meeting the scheme rather than the advertised 9. Is it possible that people could park in the driveway, the private road, as we're now discovered, the private road around the edge of the whole building, in actual fact, to allow more parking and not parking in Hillary Street itself? Is that the intention, that it would be wide enough to accommodate both the parked car and room for cars to move past?
Again, the applicant has highlighted that there is sufficient room on the site for additional parking, and there's overflow areas actually nominated on the site plan. So one would envisage that, yes, there would be capacity to park on the site, and whether they chose to park on the road, the sealed road, or on the grass would be a choice for the parishioners. But yeah, there is ample space on the site, and I think the report highlights that it's unlikely that the street parking in the neighbouring streets would be used immediately in the future. Yeah.
Further question, Councillor Harris? Councillor Gibson, a question.
Thanks. My questions also pertain to parking, and I want to first of all preface my question by saying thanks for the very detailed report. It's appreciated. The question relates to the number of parishioners that are expected at services, and indeed the number of parishioners that are being put forward, i.e. to ensure that there is adequate parking. Given the size and scale of the church, and given obviously the room for additional parishioners, is the requirement and the determination of 12 parking spaces arrived at based on the number of parishioners that the applicant has put forward rather than the size and scale of the development?
Thanks for your question, Councillor. Again, we assess the parking under the code and the scheme, and the scheme clearly says for a place of worship it's to be per the square meterage, and so that equates to 12 car parks. That's what we've done the assessment on. However, as the documentation that was provided indicates how many parishioners, how many spaces, and the available parking available space on the land. So we believe that what we're conditioning of 12 spaces plus any additional space available for overflow is sufficient to meet the needs of the development at this stage.
Councillor Walker, a question?
A question or two, if I may, Chair. Sure. Thank you very much. And I might start, I suppose, with those car parks and the spare land. I suppose we might presume that if you were living in that area, that it was going to be future residential land. It's zoned general residential. Of course, other things can be permitted to be used on that, but nonetheless, there's a access road before you get to the private land that has been put in by that previous developer, I suppose you'd say. That would have been at the time, I'm presuming, for the provision of further residential development, right? Or just access to that block. What was the rationale behind putting that access road in? Because we're not to know any of that information, yet nonetheless there's people living along the front there who have an access road going between their houses. It's possibly not relevant to this discussion, so I'll leave it stand, but nonetheless we have a lot of spare land around this development, a large amount of spare land around the development. So my question, I suppose, is, was there any discussion about the development and the appropriateness, I suppose, of the lot size compared to the development and the use of the land? Is that in any way something that we can address through the planning scheme?
Thanks for your question, Councillor. Again, the assessment is for a place of worship at 29 Hillary Street. So we need to assess what's in front of us and what is submitted. Acknowledging that there was a subdivision of land which has resulted in 29 Hillary Street, and that would have need to have been assessed under the subdivision requirements at the time. My understanding was that that has occurred. Again, as I've said before, if there is a subdivision that is proposed at a later date within the site, it would need to meet the requirements and the GATT standards of drawings and construction. Again, I think you've probably half answered your question, Councillor, without being rude. We're not considering that in this development. There has been a previous subdivision which has resulted in the land that we have in front of us at the moment. So, I don't want to speculate on what we know, what we don't know. We need to assess what we've been presented with and what is the premise of the application.
You're not being rude, and I'm being rather rhetorical, I will admit. When through you, Chair, our Deputy Mayor listed the intensity of use as being a part of the assessment process, does that include the height or the character, the scale of the building on the land, or the noise? Are any of those considered part of the intensity of the use?
I might throw to my manager, Richard, to have a discussion about what we understand intensity to be in the planning scheme. My understanding is the intensity is more about, perhaps traffic, etc., rather than the actual character, because that's assessed under a separate clause. But Richard, if you'd like to. Yeah.
Well, I think the distinction is use and development. So if it's development, planning schemes splits assessment into use and development. So they are linked, obviously. Bigger buildings tend to have more capacity for use. But in this case, the standard deals with the intensity of the use, how many people, how many times they meet, and the activities that go on there, noting that that's related. But the height of the building, if it doesn't relate to an additional capacity for people or meeting, it's probably not related to the intensity itself. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does indeed. Further questions, if I may, Chair. Are there height restrictions? I mean, 20 metres would seem, for a residential development, rather high. I don't know of any. Sorry, not a residential development, a development in a residential area, to be correct. Are there any height restrictions in general residential?
Thanks for your question, Councillor. It is a discretionary use in the zone. We are assessing it under that the general residential zone, building heights and building standards. So as in the report says, the building height in the general residential zone is 8.5 metres. The building is exceeding that, and that's why we are assessing it as a discretionary use in the zone.
Further questions or speakers before we get to Councillor Harris as the seconder? Okay, Councillor Harris is the seconder.
Yeah, thank you. Just the use of the building as a discretion, if I may ask a question first. I guess if it's discretionary, then a place of worship is permitted, and you're nodding to say yes.
It's not permitted, it's assessed as a discretionary use. So community entertainment is a discretionary use. Richard, would you like to?
Yeah, permitted and discretionary are the assessment pathways, depending on compliance with the scheme. It's what we might call an allowable use. So it's one that council is allowed to consider. It's either permitted or discretionary, depending on the pathway. But in this case, the table of use dictates that it's discretionary.
Okay, and is that similar to the way that a medical facility can be also permitted within the general residential zone?
Yeah, allowed.
Allowed.
Yeah, so permitted means it's a permitted use and it meets the applicable standards. I don't want to pick you up on the terminology, but it's quite important because permitted has a specific meaning.
And this is allowed?
This is an allowable use in the zone and its assessment is discretionary.
Good, thank you. I will speak now that I've tried to get my words right, so that we talk it's about an allowable use. It's interesting, we often hear many people come to us and tell us about how things are going to be changed in their neighbourhood. And I can remember one particular example in Lower West Launceston who said, if you build this in front of me, I'll no longer be able to see the church spires of the city, as part of her view that she saw as being very attractive for her property. So I guess beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Yes, there will be a change here in St Leonard's. There is an existing church there, but it's been decommissioned and sold off. And it is a new church. But new churches are not unusual in suburban areas, mainly because they would often attract the locals to walk to their church. However, since the advent of the motor car, that's probably changed a lot of that. And so we do see the many churches congregated in the centre of the city and very few suburban churches, and many of those that are in the suburbs have in fact been disused because people tend to go to a larger congregation. So yes, this is a big building. It's mainly just over the 8.5. I think it's 9.7 metres tall to the roof of the main structure, then the spire on top of that, taking it close to the previously mentioned 20 metres. The hours of use on Sundays and possibly between 9 and 2 and 7 p.m. to 9 p.m, I don't find that would cause any great stress on the traffic movements in Hillary Street, when I'm sure, like most other parts of Launceston on Sunday, a residential street is reasonably quiet, unlike the mad rush to get out at 8:30 when the kids go off to school. So I think from that point of view, Hillary Street, and we've heard that there will be ability for the cars to park on the land surrounding the church rather than in the street itself. So I don't see that there should be any particular traffic issues for us to have to worry about with this particular development. It is located in the middle of a large lot that could, in fact, be further subdivided around what will initially be the private access road to a full residential subdivision around the outside edge of what is a very large lot. It is, in fact, nearly 2 hectares or 4 acres in the old language at 17,000 square metres. This occupies a prime position, but it does position itself at least 50 metres from its nearest neighbour in every direction. And so I do think that its nature it will be noticeable. Whether people like the Russian influence, shall I say, or the nod to Russian architecture with its dome roofs or not, it certainly will be interesting and a talking point for anyone visiting. And I'm sure that many people will soon get used to that view because it will not block their view. It will simply be the spire will be in the foreground to your view across towards Newstead or Norwood. It certainly won't create any hazards with shadowing or anything similar. So as there were only 4 discretions for us as a planning authority to look at, the car parking has been addressed, the bicycle parking has also been concerned. The use is allowed as discretionary, so I feel we all should support this particular application today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. To speak, Councillor Gibson.
Thanks very much. There's no denying this is kind of a little random, isn't it? You know, you build a brand new house in a developing suburb and the last thing that you probably envisage is a gold-plated 20-metre spire to be in your backyard. The 17 representations that were received, the people who have contacted me, and indeed the speakers who are here today, the majority of them are not against a place of worship being in their backyard. That's really important, I think. The majority of them, indeed, are not against something in the vicinity of 8.5 or 9 metres being in their backyard. They're concerned around the maximum height of the tallest part of the structure. They're concerned about the car parking, and it's all well and good to say that perhaps on a Sunday the street will be able to take it. We struggled in the minibus to be able to manoeuvre ourselves on the road. Indeed, it was a busy time when we visited as a council, and I do think moving forward that there will be issues with regard to the traffic management and the availability of car spaces into the future, notwithstanding it meets the requirements of the scheme with the additional amended plans being required to equate to 12. So I can absolutely relate to the representors with regard specifically to 8.3.1 discretionary use and 8.5.1 non-dwelling development. Because whilst there are only those 2 real discretions to hone in on, it's almost the case that because of the allowable nature of a place of worship as part of that use, that you can almost kind of create additional questions around, well, because it is its own use in terms of a place of worship, it kind of creates its own rules. That's the reality. It almost creates its own rules by nature of being acceptable in the discretionary use category. Now, that's not a reflection on our officers. It's not a reflection on us assessing it. It's kind of a reflection on the allowable uses within that discretionary class. That if it's a church or if indeed it's a cinema or anything else that falls under that entertainment category, it can almost be as tall as you like. That's a problem. And I think for the neighbours who are not against a place of worship in their backyard, not one of them have said that to me. Important note, not one of them have said that to me. They're against the scale. They're against the height. They're against the impact that this will have in their neighbourhood, which is a relatively new subdivision. And that is their concern. and by its nature, that is my concern. So for me, that 8.3.1, that 8.5.1, it's almost a choose your own adventure. Honestly, by nature of the allowable uses within the discretionary class. Difficult.
Mm-hmm. Further speakers? Councillor Walker?
Through you, Chair, only to reiterate my sympathies with the difficultiness that has just been expressed. That was always going to be my issue with it. I suppose I'll start by saying the design, the layout itself, it would appear to be an odd layout if it was any other situation. But in this situation, I feel like there's just happens to be room for about 20 subdivided lots around the building. And I might be completely wrong, and it certainly doesn't have anything to do with what we are approving today, but it would appear with that circular road and the land being left blank that there is ample opportunity for further development, let's put it that way. Not what we are assessing today. This building with its 20 metres of height, accepting that it's probably only 5 or 10% of the building that reaches that height, the majority is at that more acceptable height, is nonetheless something that will have an impact on its surrounds. And as through you, Chair, Councillor Gibson said, this is not something you would expect when you've just moved into a relatively new neighbourhood, built your own house, whatever it might be, that this would appear. Of course, we all live in suburbs where there are churches. I was just reflecting where I live, and there's churches, within a few hundred metres, schools, halls, all sorts of things. None of them at 20 metres in height. So yeah, that is the one thing that I'm struggling with here. I appreciate that it is at distance from any other dwellings in the area, and I think that's somewhat mitigating the height of it. It's a spectacular design. I'd love to see it one day. That doesn't affect the way I'm going to decide today, but nonetheless, to see that orthodox style of building and the building techniques that have to be used would be interesting if indeed it's ever built. But I too am struggling with this decision based purely around that one discretion in regards to the height of that building in that location, which otherwise would be residential two-storey buildings, that go to 8 metres at a maximum. So I'd appreciate any further input from my fellow councillors. Otherwise, that's the struggle that maybe everyone will have today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Further questions or comments? There being none, Deputy Mayor to close.
Thanks, and thanks everyone for their contribution. I think odd is probably the word in relation to this particular development, on the basis that it is in a relatively new suburb or suburban area. I'll keep looking at the photo, and yes, I can see lots of issues, and potentially whatever might or might not happen into the future, Councillor Walker is for the future to determine, unfortunately. That is not the application that we're looking at today as to whether people will or won't build houses there at some future date, but that will come under the planning scheme and need to be dealt with accordingly, and parking spaces and all sorts of different things will then need to be dealt with in relation to how any such development might undertake if that was to be the case. I think you take the basis that this has been centrally located in the middle of a fairly large block of land. It's been oriented lengthways to try and reduce the mass for those people looking down the valley. And I appreciate that, yes, it will take away the view of people who live directly behind it. There's no doubt that it will have an impact on it. A two-storey house would have had a similar view if you're only in a one-storey house as well. So the reality of it is 20 metres, 10 metres, doesn't make a lot of difference if you're in a one-storey house. I suspect not. You're still going to have your view blocked. But having said that, there is a discretionary use application, and as our planning director said, it's allowable, not permitted. So therefore, there's been an assessment under the provisions to say that it is allowable in this particular circumstance. I see the fact that the block is as large as it is actually does diminish its size relative to the rest of the area because it is set back significantly from any residential builders. So I think that, in my view, because it is an allowable use, my view is that I still think it's unfortunately something that I'll be supporting today.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Okay, putting the recommendation to the vote. All of those in favour? Those against? One against, Councillor Gibson. The motion is carried. (10.2) 99 Abels Hill Road, St Leonard subdivision, 1 lot into 7 lots and construction of a road. Before we get to the recommendation, some speakers on 99 Abels Hill Road. Sophie?
I'll speak first.
You're going first, so Shane?
Yeah, Shane. Good afternoon, Mayor and Alderman. My name is Shane Hall. I live at 97 Ablesville Road, St Leonards, directly below the proposed subdivision, number 99. Thank you for the opportunity to outline my concerns to the subdivision before you. Sophie and I have worked hard all our lives to be able to put everything we have into our forever home at 97 Ablesville Road. A quiet 5-acre lot, close to amenities and work, where we have made a home for ourselves and our animal family since 2010. Upon receiving a notice of advertising, sorry, I'm not much of a public speaker, advertising the proposed subdivision on the 23rd of the 9th, 23, we noted the change in the access location from the previous east side to the west side boundary, with the subdivision road entering right next to our home. Further, the road layout, now, I'm sorry, I'm very
okay.
good public speak. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Just start on. Okay. I'm sorry.
Upon receiving a notice advising the proposed subdivision on the 23rd of September 23, we noted a change in the access location from the previous east side to the west side at our boundary, with the subdivision road now near our home. Further, the road layout now provides a substantial verge area at our boundary, which we will have to maintain and to minimise weed infestation and possible fire risk. Our access to the area will be difficult as there is no verge area at our frontage over which to take maintenance equipment or footpath. The security of our land is also a concern, with the new road exposing more of our boundary to the general public. Any breach of our side fence would provide an opening for our livestock to escape to Abels Hill Road, putting the animals at risk as our road safety hazard. In conclusion, please note we will accept subdivision of the land provided that the new road junction is relocated away from our side boundary. Our concern being the present road location impacts on our security, amenity and future verge maintenance and responsibilities. That was Shane's address. Mine. Lord Mayor, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Sophie Duncan. My address is 97 Abels Hill Road, St Leonards, Tasmania. Thank you for this opportunity. As we have already outlined with our representations, we do not oppose development of this site. However, we still have some serious concerns. Once we were notified of the subdivision in September of this year, we followed council process, which included attending 2 meetings with council town planners, seeking professional advice, as well as contacting the development company with a reasonable request, which resulted with no response. The main objection by Shane and I have is the location of the road junction. where it is estimated up to 54 cars per day will be entering and departing. This said junction is on the border of our rural living zone property and is only a few metres away from our house, which will have a huge impact to our quality of our daily lives and if it proceeds in the location it has been proposed to. The road location provides no benefit to us at all. In fact, more the opposite, as it disadvantages us. There will be ongoing upkeep of another nature strip for us to maintain, not to mention full financial responsibility of fencing and maintenance of this section. There will be higher risks in terms of security to our residents. For example, potential vandalism, burglaries and litter issues that face us in stormwater drains and on nature strips presently. Our livestock, being horses, will be further exposed also from this proposed road location. While there are numerous flaws within this proposal of subdivision, our main focus, we require a solution, is the road location. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. A further speaker, George. Councillor Britton.
Dear Mayor and Councillors, George Walker, Suite 103, 287 Charles Street, Launceston, representing the applicant 60 Degrees. We're of the firm view that the proposed 7-lot subdivision at Abels Hill Road will result in a positive planning outcome on multiple fronts. The application is made under the previous provisions of the Launceston Interim Planning Scheme. The Interim Planning Scheme allows for an absolute minimum lot size of 1 hectare in the rural living zone, whereas the absolute minimum lot size under the current scheme, the Tasmanian Planning Scheme, is 1.6 hectares. The Interim Planning Scheme therefore allows for a higher lot yield, making efficient use of existing residential zoned land in St Leonards. The road has been designed to allow for appropriate sightlines on Abels Hill Road and to allow for drainage of stormwater from the road and from upper side lots. It's also been designed to its maximum length whilst ensuring that each proposed lot meets the 1 hectare minimum. If they're not 1 hectare, they would be prohibited under the planning scheme. Allowance has also been made for a future road to provide connectivity to the adjoining property to the northwest in the event this land is earmarked for and able to support residential growth as part of the broader St Leonards Waverley urban growth area. If the application was to be refused, then the landowner would need to submit a new application under the Tasmanian Planning Scheme, which would create a series of standard and internal lots, which would remove all opportunity to plan for road connectivity in this location for any future development of that land. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. To the recommendation. So the recommendation for this one is that a permit be granted for subdivision 1 lot into 7 lots and construction of a road at 99 Abels Hill Road, St Leonards, subject to the published conditions. Somebody to move. Councillor Harris is moving. A seconder? Councillor Walker? Councillor Harris. A question first?
Question first, I think.
Okay.
We've heard, thank you for our speakers who've come along, Shane and Sophie. It's always a bit scary to stand up and speak in front of people. And I just a question which hopefully one of our planners can answer in regard to why the access road was moved from its, or I guess, original location, which is currently used to access the block, to the proposed location further down the hill. Whether the reasons behind that. Thank you.
The proposal came in with the access road, first of all, on the eastern side of the property. It was referred to our infrastructure team who required it to be moved further down to get a better sight lines along Abel Hills Road. And so the sight line was the reason for the change of access location.
Thank you. With the change of access, do you know the distance that the new access road will be from the the property at 97, that the house that's on the property of 97 Abels Hill Road, what the distance on that might be from the edge of the road.
I'm just checking. I'm not 100% sure. It's be around about 18 metres from the property boundary.
Thank you. 18 metres being the normal width of a suburban block, I guess, is probably...
Maybe a little bit smaller, but yeah.
Yeah, around that sort of size. Thank you. This particular development application... oh no, I do have, sorry, one further question for you if I can. I noticed there was a setback from the rural resource zone land to lot 5 and 7 because they aren't 200 metres deep and the blocks themselves aren't 200 metres in depth. So what is the reason under the planning scheme, and I'm assuming we're talking here the old planning scheme, that allows us to do that from land that is zoned rural resource? And I assume it's so that a farmer can continue to carry out farming activities on his land without having his suburban neighbours complaining and stopping him from doing what a farmer's always done.
Yes, councillor, that's correct. So the setback is there to preserve the agricultural use of the land on the adjoining property. When a dwelling is constructed and when applied for, and if it is within that 200 metres, we have to consider it on its merits. So it depends literally on what the use of the adjoining property is. So grazing, for example, has would have a different impact than if someone was cropping.
Right, so it's not a blanket ban, shall we say.
No, it's a discretion.
There are circumstances where a house built within 50 metres of that boundary could in fact be an acceptable use because just over the boundary there is cattle grazing rather than crop dusting going on or whatever requires such a big distance. Thank you for that. And do we know, or are we anticipating for that land, as Mr. Walker mentioned, to potentially be rezoned from its current rural living, resource zoning to something like rural living or even general res? Is that known to us at all?
At this stage, there isn't any proposal for a rezoning, but that's not to say that it could not happen in the future, given development of the end of Waverley. Yes. South of Waverley.
Yes, South Waverley area, that would be right. And I guess probably the last question for you regarding the rural living zone. Some people have made mention of the lack of footpath or otherwise to get around the subdivision other than on the roadway. And I do realise we're addressing this under the old planning scheme. Does the new planning scheme provide any such capability or facility that a developer has to provide space for council or for the residents for some future footpath development, etc.?
Again, no, there's no change in that respect.
Thank you for that. So that's all my questions, so I'm here to, I guess, introduce this. This is a subdivision of one 8-hectare lot into 7 smaller hectare rural living, under the old rural living zone. As mentioned, the lots will be around about 10,000 square metres or just on a hectare in size. There are a number of discretions in regard to frontage and access. There has been much discussion with the proponent, as we heard, to move the access road closer down the hill to improve the visibility of the traffic that uses Abels Hill Road, so that it does improve the safety of all cars exiting and entering the subdivision, along with those who are just traversing down Abels Hill Road. Also, there's been discussion about what a future might look like for this particular subdivision, should the land that is currently zoned rural resource be rezoned into either rural living or in fact general residential at a future time. It will allow the road not to be a closed cul-de-sac, but in fact an 18-metre wide strip is to be provided on, I think it's lot 4, to enable a road to be continued onto what is the current rural land, hence not creating another cul-de-sac, which cul-de-sacs have their place, but they also do create problems with access and through roads and things like that. So that is a nod to its potential. And in fact, the splitting up of this block from its current 8 hectares for one house down to 1 hectare for 7 houses will probably help those others in the area maintain what they enjoy about living in the rural living part of St Leonard's. The 1 hectare lots would be basically uneconomic to a degree in our lifetime, I'm sure, to subdivide down to small 600 or maybe 450 square metre blocks at some future time. So consequently, I feel it will in fact be maintaining and encouraging the rural aspect of people who live that far up Abels Hill Road, because we can see from what is happening further down Abels Hill Road, closer to St Leonard's Road, where more traditional, smaller residential subdivision is occurring. And by having these larger lots, it does act as a buffer from them continuing to come up there, because an 8 hectare lot may be a lot more attractive to develop into small residential lots in the future than what a number of individually owned 1 hectare lots would be. So I think this is a good outcome as negotiated by our planners. It does provide for the future. Should Waverley continue to grow, we can connect through this road. I do appreciate that and understand that the current residents will have a change to what they have had in the past. And yes, there will be some movements closer to your home, 50 odd a day, once that subdivision is fully built out. I suspect that might take some time, but that is the nature, I guess, of land. We're not making any more of it. And as a consequence, we tend to have greater intensification of our land, and well-located land like what is in St Leonard's is hard to find in the Launceston council area. And as such, we will see more and more development of residential things as our city continues to grow, because quite simply there really isn't a lot of other spaces for Launceston to grow other than in the St Leonard's and Waverley area. So I put this to you, councillors. We should support this development application and leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Walker is the seconder. Oh, question first, Deputy Mayor.
Just a question, just in regard, thank you, Mr Hall and Ms Duncan, for your submission. Just want to clarify whether there are any setback rules in regards to roads, road verges and existing buildings, and if there's any issue associated with where this road comes out.
The planning scheme doesn't stipulate anything in that regard.
Thank you.
No further questions? Question, Councillor Gibson.
Thanks so much. Notwithstanding the amended plans required on page 81.2 with regard to the reservation, the 18 metre wide reservation, future road connection, what is the role of the traffic impact statement in as much as the recommendations that have been contained within it? Specifically page 36 of the TIA, which makes some recommendations for the network, not specific just to this DA, but to the actual suggestions for council and its connection with DSG. So how do we use that, and how do we follow through or take on board the suggestions that have been made in the traffic impact assessment?
You stopped me there. So generally, when we consider, and this is partly an infrastructure, the matters to do with roads are an infrastructure matter, and so they've through when the application comes in, it gets referred to our infrastructure and our traffic engineers, and so they provide recommendations onto a planning permit in that regard. So we are guided by what our infrastructure team would advise us.
So more clearly, it might be more a question for the acting CEO, Mayor, through you. With regard to those specific suggestions, recommendations that have come as an accompanying document to the development application, that in the view of the professional who has undertaken the traffic impact statement, they've asked us to consider doing specific things. Obviously, the engineering department have looked at that, considered it. When do we go back to those recommendations to see if indeed, as intensification of the space, of the use of the road network continues, do we go back to that, or is it just kind of full stop, red line, because it's not warranted for this particular subdivision?
So in terms of those other recommendations that aren't required to support the development or not, I'm going to say they're considered, they are considered by council officers. I guess I'm going to say council as a whole considers future works programs and maintenance programs, and they're considered in terms of all the priorities within our road traffic network. There's always things we can be doing better, but what are the things that give us the best value and what are our highest priorities as a council? So we're more than aware of the challenges in that area. It's just how do they fit into the broader road network planning that we undertake?
Any further questions?
No, but I'll be on the list to speak.
Sure. Okay, Councillor Walker is the seconder.
Could start with some questions, please.
Okay.
So we initially had an application that had the road using the existing driveway, is that correct? And we negotiated that moving westward to the westward boundary. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yes, Councillor Walker, the application was submitted with the road on the eastern side of the property.
Yeah, which is much where the existing driveway
Yes,
to the property.
and then our infrastructure team, in conjunction with the traffic impact assessment, etc., they negotiated and they've sought that the driveway be moved to the western side.
And that's understandable. That was a traffic management decision. But nonetheless, that's created an issue. And I can understand their issue. Their public boundary, if you like, is now increasing as a result of that. And they've made that, and I appreciate you coming in and making that point. I must admit that wasn't at the front of my mind when I was aware that it was, an issue, but I see now that by doing that, we've created more of an issue there. And because the application has gone in under the older interim planning scheme and now is the rules of change about sizes and things like that, could we make any alterations to this plan without it having to be resubmitted? Could we? What kind of amendments could we make? Because conceivably it'd affect lot sizes and all sorts of things once you move that boundary again.
If we Thank you again. If the road was relocated, it would alter the lot sizes and therefore they wouldn't comply with the planning.
They barely met the required 1 hectare, don't they? So it just would seem...
The application would have to be redesigned. It would have to be...
and under a new planning scheme. It just seems rather... Oh, I will speak now, thank you, if I may, Chair. It would seem sort of fortuitous, if not coincidental, that the lot sizes appear to just barely meet the planning scheme at the same time as this road was moved from an initial plan, which I'm not to know was maybe only 6 lots, because I cannot understand when I look at the map how 7 lots would have met the minimum requirement at the existing eastern entrance to the property. I might be wrong. It might be a totally different layout, but as it stands, those 2 lots at the front of the property barely meet the 10,000 square metre rule. So there's probably a mystery I'll never understand in that regard. Nonetheless, any alteration, it would appear, any attempt to rectify the issue that the neighbours have on the western side will probably trigger this going to be resubmitted as new plans under the new planning scheme, where 1.6 hectares is the designated size, and therefore you would lose a couple of lots in the process. it seems unfortunate that at that time, where, and I can only presume this is the case, where those decisions were being made to move that entrance, that there were no objectors because the plans hadn't been made public yet. And so that, and I'm not asking a question, so I won't ask that to be answered, unless you would wish to address that. Is that the case?
I can answer that question. The application was advertised and I incorrectly put the wrong plan on advertising the first time. So it had to be it was re-advertised with the correct plan a week later. So that's the only reason that the representatives were aware that the plans were changed, because the first document wasn't technically a public document.
Still doesn't make any easier our decisions today. On top of that, as being referred to, this Able Hills Road is a road that we consider to be, I suppose, increasingly a major thoroughfare, notwithstanding the issues that it has further down the hill. It is being used as a major thoroughfare for people across town. So any intersection that we're creating there, I can imagine, you know, our traffic team would be very mindful of where that intersection's put. It's just unfortunate that it's being put next door to the neighbours, who now will, if this is approved today, inherit an extra street frontage, which, you know, does have, you know, impedes on their the amenity of their block, something they probably would never expected to have happened. So, you know, I don't think anyone is against the idea of this subdivision as such and the lot sizes and things like that. It's just unfortunate, that series of events that have led to this position where someone is being impacted, I would say, you know, maybe not unfairly, but, you know, unduly impacted as a result of these decisions and the process that we went through to arrive at this decision. As they have expressed, they would not mind if the driveway was, you know, further east. Looking at it, it seems like there's no mitigating factors to make that little strip of land there private property, to tack it on to another property, even if it's only a couple of metres wide. Even an amendment like that would probably, you know, have the potential to mean that it have to be resubmitted. So, you know, with that in mind, this does, by and large, meet the interim planning scheme of previous years. And so it is very hard to find a reason to knock it back because of that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Gibson.
Yeah, thanks. I agree almost entirely with what Councillor Walker has pondered there with regard to the situation we find ourselves in, and I too support the notion that it is a relatively compliant DA before us. I'm surprised if it is indeed the case that no reply was received from the firm. That's not normally the way that they work. Nonetheless, this is the application that they have put in, and Catherine, thank you so much for, you know, we all make mistakes, so this isn't anything to do with the advertisement in one or two iterations. It is what it is, and it's been assessed accordingly. But for me, the issues pertain really to the road, and I will be ensuring, and I certainly appreciate the comments of the CEO, I will be ensuring that we take on board the recommendations that are contained within the traffic impact assessment, as well as my own observations and the comments that I've heard over a number of years pertaining to that part of our city and the need for us to ensure that our advocacy with the Department of State Growth is as it should be. I think there are also issues with regard to water, and I know that that's contained within the standards requiring discretion and the reticulation of the water, and that is as it is. So appreciate the way that that's fallen, but I do think that's an issue as well. And as more comes online in that area, it's going to be something that we're going to be faced with increasingly. Something we're really going to need to keep our eye on. That's not specific necessarily to this DA, but indeed moving forward, it's something we're going to need to keep our eyes on. But just reaffirming, I think that the road and our role, wearing a different hat, that we'll need to really take on board some of those recommendations, and indeed that's what I'll be doing.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks. I've got about 3 or 4 things just to add to it. I think often we face these subdivisions or these applications and the traffic impact assessment says nothing needed to be done. This is a change where we've actually had something which says we do need to do something about it. And I think the times are changing in Abels Hill Road, whether any of us like it or not. We can see further down the activity that's going on further down the property, and that will only increase, I think, as time goes by, the potential of Waverley to join up at some stage. So I think the repositioning of the road makes good sense from a road safety point of view. It doesn't make great sense from a neighbour's point of view. What I would hopefully ask is that the developers now actively engage with their neighbour at 97 Abels Hill Road to try and look at the impact that it's got and try to do something positive to reflect some of the concerns that they're showing, which may be better fencing, and maybe they help out with the fencing and even with the road verge and things like that. But something like doing something as a neighbour to try and, to lessen the impact that's happening if this is approved today. Because I think the reality of it is, if you look at the lot sizes around, they go between 2, 3, 4. I think there's only one in the list there that's only 1 hectare. So this is going to be 7 new lots at 1 hectare. I think the future planning, looking at the cul-de-sac and the potential for that to link in with Waverley, is only going to put more pressure back on Abels Hill Road at some future stage. The developments happening at the bottom of Abels Hill Road is doing that. The Drovers Run is doing that. So the pressure on Abels Hill Road is getting, and those idiots who want to ride up and on a bike just to test their manhood or womanhood. It's a very popular street for many different activities, having ridden up and down it a few times myself. But I think that, take Councillor Gibson's view and understanding what the acting CEO says, I think we need to now take on board the future development aspects of that road to ensure that it is fit for purpose for what's happening now and what's going to happen into the future. So it'd be something I wouldn't mind getting a report back at some stage as to how we prioritise those developments as the TIA suggests.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any further questions or comments around the table? Councillor Harris to close.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for my fellow councillors for your thoughts. Yes, it's an interesting one, and as the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Mackenzie said, perhaps a good opportunity for the developer to engage with their new neighbours at 97 or their existing neighbours at 97 and see how that can be best addressed to give them not only some comfort from a security point of view, but also gaining access to perhaps keep it well known and things like that. Hopefully also the developer will consider some of the comments made about the, despite the fact that our planning scheme doesn't encourage or doesn't require any footpaths or walking facilities in the rural living zone, they are nevertheless something that makes it a more pleasant subdivision. And so how they might include that is something they can look forward to. But at this stage, I'm happy to put it to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. In putting that to the vote, all of those in favour? That is all councillors present. Motion is carried. Moving to 10.3. 2 to 4 Middle Street, Launceston, residential construction of a dwelling subdivision, subdivide 1 lot into 2 lots. Before we do get to the recommendation, looking for if there are any speakers. Any speakers to Middle Street? There being none, we'll move forward to the recommendation. The recommendation is that a permit be granted for residential construction of a dwelling subdivision, subdivide 1 lot into 2 lots at 2 to 4 Middle Street, Launceston, subject to the published agenda conditions. Somebody to move. Deputy Mayor to move. A seconder, Councillor Harris. Deputy Mayor.
Before I speak, I just wouldn't mind asking the officer the context, in the referral comments, we've got our heritage and urban design. The council's place and heritage office advised the subject site is listed as a local heritage place within Launceston's local provision schedule of the Tasmanian planning scheme. The site maintains a single-storey circa 1890s weatherboard cottage with pitched roof and veranda. The structure was originally owned, blah, blah. The Middle and Babington Street is unique maintenance of single-storey Victorian Federation era weatherboard cottages with very few modern intrusions. Characteristic materials here comprise painted weatherboard, external walls, corrugated iron, etc., etc. I'm just querying what that commentary actually lends itself to, other than just telling us about the character. Is it just a nice to know thing, or is there any heritage significance about what we should be looking at in relation to this development?
Thank you for that. Generally speaking, because it's a site that's listed on our local heritage listing, we sought advice from our place and heritage officer, and she provided the context of that general area. And as you would know from going through, through Babington Street and down Middle Street, one-way streets, and they are characterised by those single-storey, largely weatherboard cottages. And it's the context of that our heritage officer felt that we should be giving some regard to in this development application of the lot behind. And so I thought it's certainly relevant to put that in there for the councillors to be aware of that as a context for this. And as you recall, I pointed out in the report that having the proposed building located behind these cottages, that significantly minimises its impact on that specific area.
Thank you for that. I just thought it was worthwhile just exploring that before I spoke. Look, this is the third time I think we've been to Middle Street in the last few years for, I won't say the same development, but a similar style, that there's something built in the back blocks. And so I guess we've maintained the streetscape of Middle Street in regards to what we've done. And we've then come up with, I think as we've gone on, we've become more modern in the texture of what we're actually building each time we go through. I guess if you look at the site, you've got a commercial property on one boundary. You've got another development that's about to occur on the other boundary. And I'm trying to work out where 1 Babington Street is, which was referenced somewhere in there, but on the other side at the northern or northwestern end of the block, there appears to be car parking and so forth like that. So therefore, this development in itself is unlikely to impinge greatly on the amenity of its neighbours, other than the new build that's happening on the other side of the fence. And again, we had the conversation at that time when we approved that about its impact on the amenity of the neighbour on that side of the fence. So my sense is that always difficult when you're dealing in an area which has heritage characteristics. It's close to the city, therefore intensification of sites is something, and we have the sewerage schemes that actually fit and work with all of this, and given Margaret Street station is just a couple of metres down the road, it certainly sort of fits into the fact that the infrastructure can actually handle this level of development. It's a bit bespoke in that it's relatively small, I think 78 square metres in size. Its difference is it's over 3 stories, and I guess that's understandable. Car park, bang, so it's actually a small build that's sort of packed on top of each other. Whilst the more I looked at it, I thought, oh, there's more problems than I looked at it, but I've tried to simplify my thinking about what's actually going on here. And my sense is that with respect to the representations that were made, what we're doing is we're preserving the streetscape quite well in regards to what we're doing, and we're building into the back of the blocks, which then intensifies and gives a different use to it. I'm thinking it's not impacting its neighbourhood particularly badly on the basis of a fairly significant industrial building on the other side, on the eastern side, and it's going to be sort of abutting up against a building that's on a new build that's on the back of the residence next door. So I think that whilst we may have created it by starting with the first one some years ago, and we've exacerbated it by adding to it a few weeks ago, I think this now fits in with what the streetscape or the area is now looking for. So I'll be supporting it today.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Harris, or questions first?
Question, yes, thank you. Just a question for the planner in regard the comment about urban flooding, where it says built in a riverine and urban flooding zone. Does that prohibit or necessitate the building ground floor only being car parking and garaging rather than having living space on that ground floor? Is that why we've ended up with 3 stories, I guess, is what I'm looking for, whoever's answering? You are.
Yeah, thank you. Look, the short answer is no, it doesn't prohibit that. It's within the levy protected area. However, common sense dictates that you keep your living areas out of the area likely to be flooded. We've imposed a condition or recommended a condition in regard to electrical fittings and things being above the flood height because that's common sense as well. But no, it's not an outright prohibition.
Further questions? Councillor Kai?
Just a question regarding the building envelope. I noticed it's not within the building envelope. Duncan, are you able to explain how far off the building envelope this development is?
Well, thank you. Yes, look, the building envelope is part of the acceptable solution, and so that's it starts on the side boundary at 3 metres in the air, and it goes up at 45 degrees towards the centre of the block. So if you're a metre in from the edge of the block, you can be 4 metres high. If you're 2 metres in, you can be 5 metres high. It progressively increases like that. It has a maximum height of 8.5. This building's at 8.54 metres. But more of the building is outside the building envelope simply because of its proximity to the boundary. The adjoining building recently approved on the western site had a similar impact, although it doesn't have quite the same height. It's quite a common thing. That's why we would address this under the performance criteria.
Just one question. The overshadowing, would this building have, what's the impact of this building's overshadowing on the one that we approved last time? Or even the one a little bit further? Is there any impact on the one with the solar panels?
No, look, the shadow won't reach 2 properties down. The shadow, first thing in the morning, if we didn't have any hills in the city, the sun would get to it and project a shadow first thing in the morning that would cover the recently approved building. However, by the time the overall shadows of the area have moved around, so to have the shadow from this, so this proposed building will have almost no shadow thrown on the recently approved one, and then the shadow will move across the site during the course of the day.
Now, we did go on site with, I can remember the building on the eastern side. Was there any windows on that building, that existing building that's already there?
The eastern side, well, that's the solid brick wall for the car display.
Oh, right, and there's no windows. There's no windows on there.
There's no on the existing dwelling on the western side. There's no windows on the wall of the main house. However, there is the approval that we did for the 2 single-storey conjoined units on that site. The existing house on that site was to be redeveloped. That would incorporate a veranda and a window on that side wall. So the shadow from this proposed house will move across that window during the course of the day. So it will get some direct sunlight onto the veranda and through that window first thing in the morning or in the early hours of the morning. The shadow of the proposed building will move across it during the day. It will get more natural and direct sunlight later in the afternoon.
Thank you.
Further questions? Councillor Harris is the seconder.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the questions. You answered some of the ones I had as well. So I do thank you for asking those questions, Councillor Kai. Yes, as others have said, 3-storey residential development in the inner residential zone. An existing 3-bedroom single-storey building to be left on 146 metres squared. Shows you the value of land, I guess, in our city centre. The new Lot 2 will in fact have 309 metres, although as Councillor Mackenzie said, the footprint is only in the order of 70 or 80 square metres, leaving quite a bit of the other land. However, that's also where the combined sewage and stormwater runs through the property. So that's probably one of the main reasons why they haven't built over that particular part of it. Overshadowing will occur, but all properties will continue to get at least 3 hours of sunlight each day, even on the 21st of June, should there be some sunlight around. So This is an interesting one, as others have said. We're seeing it in this part of town, and now this one at 3 stories is the first that I can recall being a 3-storey high in a city development. But it does make sense when you consider the lot, and it is well designed in regard to how it throws its shadows to its neighbours. And because of the retention of the existing building at the street, it will somewhat blend to the background as well. So I'm quite happy to support this new development.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Any other speakers? Deputy Mayor Close. Nothing further? Okay. Putting it to the vote then. All of those in favour? That is all councillors present. The motion is carried. Okay, our fourth one for today, 10.4. 37 Talbot Road. Oh, well, I can rejoin in a second. 37 Talbot Road, South Launceston, residential demolition of a dwelling and associated outbuilding and construction of 4 dwellings. I do have one noted speaker so far. George.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. George Walker, Suite 103, 287 Charles Street, Launceston, representing the applicants 60 Degrees. The application before you is for the demolition of an existing dwelling, which will facilitate the construction of 4 new dwellings. It's very obvious that the site is constrained by slope. The proposed layout of the dwellings and driveway have been informed by a comprehensive civil engineering analysis and design process to ensure the grading of the driveway and parking spaces satisfy Australian Standard AS 2890, which relates to parking facilities and is a requirement of the Parking Code, whilst ensuring cut and fill is minimised to reduce risk associated with potential landslip hazards. With respect to the performance criteria that have been invoked, discretionary use, the proposal is for multiple dwellings, which is a sub-use of the residential use class. The site is located within an established residential area, and therefore the use will be compatible and will not cause an unreasonable loss of amenity to adjoining residential uses. Density. The density of the proposed dwellings will be consistent with the constraints imposed by the site and will not exceed capacity of infrastructure services. The site is located adjacent to residential land, general residential zone land to the north, east and west, which comprises significantly higher density than the density that is being proposed at the site. The proposed density will therefore be read as part of the character of the established pattern of development within the area. Front setback and side setback. The front setback of proposed Unit 1 will be consistent with the setback of the existing dwelling to be removed, as well as being compatible with the setback of adjoining and adjacent dwellings within the Talbot Road streetscape. The southeastern side boundary setback of proposed Unit 4 will be improved by the 3 metre setback required by Condition 2A, which will further assist to minimise impacts upon the adjoining residential property. We reiterate that the location of the dwellings have been dictated by the engineering requirements of the driveway and not for the purpose of disrupting the amenity of surrounding residential uses. Overall, we believe that the proposal will result in positive planning outcome by virtue of making efficient use of existing residential zone land within Launceston. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. No further speakers to the item. We will take the recommendation, which is that a permit be granted for residential demolish of a dwelling and associated outbuilding and construction of 4 dwellings at 37 Talbot Road, South Launceston, subject to the published conditions. Deputy Mayor to move. Seconded by Councillor Harris. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, and I thank Mr. Walker, who's done my work for me. I think pretty well he explained all of the issues that really require discretion. We've got 1,306 square metre, I think, average for the blocks as opposed to 1,500, but in the scale of things, in my view, that looks okay. I think there's been some representations in regards to the look of a road as they look up from Junction Street in relation to it. I don't believe that's appropriate in regards to the way that we look at this application today. The setback at the front and the setback at the side have both been explained by Mr Walker about the fact that they actually, the front setback is compatible with what's in the neighbourhood and therefore reasonable to assume that that's appropriate for the setback, and the additional moving of the setback on the eastern boundary to 3 metres has actually improved the amenity for the neighbour. So in my view, a challenging block in its slope, but at this day and age with lightweight building and so forth like that, it seems to be very appropriate and done more often than it used to be.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. A question, Councillor Harris.
Just a question. I noticed that it's low density residential, which I think has a minimum of 1,500 square metres per lot. And as the total is land area is only 5,226 square metres on 2 titles, 1,500 doesn't divide even into 4 in that. But I also noticed when I read it that something about a strata. So is this in fact to be strata titled that each of the 4 residents will own on the one block, or is it in fact to be subdivided in inverted commas into 4 individual lots as such?
Thank you, Councillor Harris. The strata titling is beyond the planning application as such, but there is no intent for there to be a subdivision, but the option does exist for the lots to be, the properties to be, well, the dwellings to be strata titled in the future.
Thank you. So that makes sense of how you can get the 4, because the overall lot of the land is in fact still over 5,000 square metres, so therefore we've met the minimum density of that. So I find this to be, as others have said, a good use of a difficult site. And despite the couple of changes that have been forced to perhaps give a little bit further setback off the southern boundary, and also raising the sill height to 1.5 metres on the windows on that southern side, I think it's a good use of that land. It is difficult. It is previously been known as landslip. I'm sure that it probably still has some landslip capability, but as others have said, the ability to build using lightweight building products on a land that had previously been unsuitable for the construction techniques of the day means that we can in fact now still build this. And of course, 37 Talbot Road is still nice and close to the city, so therefore adds more residential dwellings closer to our city, which is always something to be encouraged. And I'll be supporting it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Gibson.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak to this one. I think that the Speaker, George, really did sum up everything about this, particularly for me, referencing the amended plans with specific reference to dwelling number 4, and obviously the terrain, which everyone has previously mentioned of the site. I think for me, this is a continuation of what I hope we'll see on that hill face, an opportunity to really improve our housing stock, increase rather our housing stock with some obviously fantastic views outside of what we're being asked to consider today, and applaud the developer for taking on the challenge.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Further comments or questions around the table? Deputy Mayor to close. Nothing further? Okay, putting it to the vote then. All of those in favour? That is all councillors present. The motion is carried. (10.5) The rezoning of land at 9 Rose Lane, South Launceston. Any public speakers to Rose Lane? There being none, we'll move to the recommendation, which is that council consider any representations if received to draft the amendment as number 1, and recommendation 2 is recommends to the Tasmanian Planning Commission that the draft amendment be approved as shown in the published agenda, subject to the site being demonstrated to be suitable for its intended purpose as required by the National Environmental Protection, the assessment, measure and other relevant guidelines. Somebody to move? Deputy Mayor. Seconder? Councillor Gibson? Deputy Mayor.
Thanks. I think this is just simply now us going through the process of what was actually sent back to us by the Planning Authority. We approved a development application plus a rezoning. The planning what do they call themselves? The Planning Commission, then sent back and suggested we might do a slightly different rezoning to what we approved, which was relating to general residential. We've accepted that recommendation from the planning, I keep getting it right, the planning authority, but on the basis that we haven't done any testing for contamination on the site, and given that it was an old refuse site, that we believe that needs to be done to meet with the environmental requirements. So our condition is subject to that being satisfactorily passed, or satisfactorily dealt with. And as a result of that, the original DA that we approved on the original change of the planning scheme, or of the zone, now needs to be rescinded, which has been noted by, I think it was actually sent back to us by the proponent, saying that he was happy for that to happen. So this is now effectively turning over our decision to actually approve the subdivision based on the original planning scheme zone change, which is now no longer effective. So I think that's all we're doing today.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson is the seconder.
Almost all of what Councillor
The word economy. Any further comments or questions around the table? Deputy Mayor, anything further to close? There being none, we'll put it to the vote then. All of those in favour? That is all councillors present. The motion is carried. And now this is the part where I say, isn't it, Deputy Mayor, we no longer sit as planning authority with 5 items. Well done, General Manager Ogulin. And good button pressing over here. Okay, so, yeah, well done to the planners too. Announcements by the Mayor at agenda item number 11, 11.1. You'll see them all noted there. I would just like to make 2 amendments to say that I was represented by Councillor Harris at the, what was that celebration? Councillor Harris will tell us a little bit later on. The Playgroup Tasmania 50th, and also at Prospect High School, but all the rest are there in the agenda. And we'll go to those councillor reports now at agenda item 12, councillor reports. Yes, Councillor Harris.
Yes, I attended the Prospect High graduation for 2023 on a rather hot Tuesday morning, Tuesday lunchtime in a gymnasium without air conditioning. So you didn't miss out on much on that one. It was rather hot and sweaty. Great to see the kids who go to Prospect, my old school, and it certainly has changed a lot since I left in 1976 as far as the school building goes. But the students still look forward, and I think the world is in good hands. Also attended the Playgroup, which was the 50th anniversary out there at Invermay, which is a redevelopment of an old kindergarten, something that we're sort of facing ourselves in Frederick Street. So that certainly has been completely renovated into a very suitable space for the Playgroup, and that's been going 50 years, and I'm sure many of us who have children have used the facilities of a local playgroup, started by 2 ladies in Hobart just 50 years ago. And the third thing I really want to mention was I also sat in on a meeting of the Tasmanian Active Living Council, which had a guest speaker of Cherie Vertigan from the Cradle Coast Authority, talking about the success of something that was started in the 1990s and is still now only 80% completed, but that is the Northwest Pathway that currently runs from the Trobe, not quite through to Wynyard, and there are a few spaces missing around Penguin and also Round Hill in Burnie, but it's a 110-kilometre off-road bike, cycle and active living walkway that runs right along the coast. And it shows the benefits of all levels of government working together, local, state and federal. It shows the benefits of persistence of what the region desired. And in fact, there's already been requests for funding from the state government to extend the pathway from just being short of Wynyard all the way out to, in fact, Stanley. As well as additional links to the pathway from people who aren't passed by the pathway, such as Forth, to connect through to Turners Beach. So it just goes to show what can be done with a lot of persistence. So I do congratulate the Cradle Coast Authority on the success so far of the Northwest Pathway, and perhaps look forward to when we might have something similar connecting ourselves here in the city to neighbouring residential councils to enable safe transport using cycling or active living, walking, etc. That's about me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Kai, then Councillor Palmer.
Thank you. I was fortunate enough to be able to attend all 3 of the 16 days of activism, Walk to End Violence Against Women. These past 3 Fridays have seen a large number of people taking messages out into the streets for prevention of violence against women. These well-organised walks created an opportunity for talking along the way, hearing life experiences and messages from the steps of the town hall, and for signs being worn or on vest or carried to demonstrate the serious matter of violence. On Friday, the 1st of December, was the second walk with Northern Midlands Mayor Mary Knowles sharing her experience with domestic violence and her story of hope. Joining that walk was Councillor Walker, Councillor Maman, and also Councillor Dawkins. On Friday, the 8th of December, Councillor Professor Raze and myself attended the last of the 3 walks for this year. Thank you to everyone who joined and helped to raise awareness of family violence that can be prevented. On Monday, the 4th of December, I attended with the Mayor to the Migrant Resource Centre Tasmania's Cultural Connections opening ceremony at the Civic Square. The MRC Tasmania, or just called MRC Tas Phoenix Centre, is bringing the community a 12-week series of sessions to help migrants connect with the Australian culture. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kai. Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor. On Wednesday, the 6th of December, I represented yourself at the Door of Hope at the Launceston Christian School end-of-year celebration. It was wonderful to see all the students and many students receiving very special awards. So that was wonderful to attend, a wonderful school, and some great messages out of that. And if I may, this Saturday, the Lilydale community have their Christmas carols being held at the Lilydale Bowls Club. Gates open at 5 and it starts at 6 p.m. with lots of performers. The Lilydale District High School and lots of Northern talents, face painting, sausage sizzles, pizza van, fairy floss, and even a visit from Santa. And then, of course, on Sunday, we have the Launceston Christmas carols being held at the Silverdome. Doors open at 4:30, entertainment from 6 till 8:30 with an incredible host, Joe Palmer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks. On the 1st of December, went to the final of our 40th anniversaries for the Northern Suburbs Community Centre out at the Newnham campus, and it was great to see Frank Medill, our patron there, and Denise Stelfin tell us what's gone on over the last 40 years. It was fantastic. And Councillor Palmer, I know, enjoyed that, and yourself, Mayor, turned up as well. So it was a fantastic day for the community, and I think it's terrific to see how that's going strong and getting stronger every year. The Christmas parade on the Saturday was absolutely fantastic, and I saw Dorothy the dinosaur dancing around, even though I sort of had to work it out for myself where I was standing there watching. So it was fantastic. But just I was on its knees a number of years ago, and I did see the acting CEO wandering down the street as well. And so just how I think that parade's come back to life again after a few years ago being very close to sort of folding. So it's fantastic. I think the city supported it to make sure that it continued, and a fantastic job by the Lions Club to bring that to the streets of Launceston again. Yesterday was a very special day for our airport. We just opened about the third thing in about 3 weeks, which was the new security screen, which went off without a hitch until the speeches started. It sort of opened at 4:40 in the morning, and I think the only blip was at about 11 o'clock when they started talking. But that was only for a few moments. But I think it's going to actually add to the amenity of the Launceston Airport and make it a very attractive place to go in and out of. If we're not Australia's best regional airport, which I think we are, we soon will be, and we'll be out after the big boys shortly. And last night I went to the Norwood Primary School end-of-year celebration. It's just fantastic how immersed the teachers are with their children, how they know each of them so well. And there was a few ratbags, I think, and rascals within the group, and they didn't mind bringing that out to the fore, but in a nice way. But it just showed that all the children have got really positive aspects to everything they do. They might not necessarily be the most scholastic or athletic, but they all contribute something to school life. And these young people are about to head off on their next journey into the senior school. And it was pretty exciting. It was a great send-off by their teachers yesterday. So it was really a pleasure to represent the council at that, and I've got a few more to go yet.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Professor Raze.
Thank you, Mayor. On Friday, 1st of December, I attended the Glenara Lakes Christmas Carol, where singers and dancers entertained the residents. In the evening, I participated in Utah's community music program end-of-year concert as a saxophone player in a concert band. This is a really community project, and I really encourage everyone, regardless of their age, from children to adults, to join and enjoy the playing musical instrument. On Saturday, the 2nd of December, it was great to participate in the Christmas parade, where thousands of people lined up and in a Christmas spirit. And of course, as our deputy mayor revealed my character as Dorothy the dinosaur, I think I lost about half a kilo in weight, just sweating and just saying high five to people. On Sunday, the 3rd of December, I enjoyed attending the New Horizon End of Year concert, where it seemed that everyone enjoyed themselves, having fun singing and dancing. And it's amazing how much they have improved over the years. On Friday, the 8th of December, at lunchtime, I participated, as the Councillor Kai mentioned, in a really worthy cause of Walk to Stop Violence Against Women, where all survivors and of violence, as well as supporters, participating in condemning the threat and intimidation toward women. In the evening of 8th of June, I represented the council for the Dr. Carly Peters exhibition at the Launceston General Hospital. This was supported by the hospital Historical, Visual and Performing Arts Committee. The Launceston City Council has supported this program through community grants. And some of the activities they have been doing, for example, include historical publication on the hospital and medical history, provision of music on the move, which support artists playing music around the hospital, and it has a positive impact on patients, visitors and staff. And also lunchtime music concert at the cafeteria, and of course supporting art exhibition every 6 to 8 weeks. And it was great that Friday to see 44 pieces of Dr. Peters' work titled Tiptoe to Tiptoe. But I would like to finish here by saying how grateful and honored I feel as to be appointed as clinical professor in the Tasmania Clinical School of Medicine. I would like to thank all the community, but most importantly, patients and carers, who were the main motivators for me actually to continue research and provide education for more than 25 years. But I must tell you a story, which was in 1996. When I applied for the job in the hospital, I rang my long-term colleague and friend, Dr. McLean Cross. I said to him, why should I come and work in a small place like Launceston? He said to me, well, I can't tell you how lovely it is here, but I'll give you an example. Some people, they go and work in another city. After 5 years, they pack their bag and they leave. But people who come to Launceston, they come and stay. And I feel like I represent and to confirm and prove that this city is a great city. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Any further councillor reports? There being none, we will move through to councillor questions on notice at 13.1. 13.11, we will see Councillor Gibson's question around plane trees at Norwood and the pump track. And we will also see at 13.1.2, Councillor Walker's question around traffic issues and the Brisbane Street Mall Christmas tree. At 13.2, do we have any councillors' questions without notice? Councillor Walker, and then followed by Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Chair. I note with interest that the council has or is hosting, has hosted the Skate of Mind initiative at different skate venues around town. My question is, have we used that opportunity to direct skaters or to get feedback from skaters for the future park upgrades?
Yes. Yep, we absolutely did. We had QR codes there, and we had our youth advisory group there. We had our officers there. We had people there that were spruiking that for sure. Particularly when they were coming up saying, "Oh, we think we should have this." Boom, go and do it. Even I saw some kids doing it there, literally on the spot.
That's fantastic, and I congratulate the council on doing that. Would the council consider extending the cut-off period for comment? I note that it's only really open this month. I think it finishes on maybe the 5th of January or something around there. I've spoken to a number of skaters who, for whatever reason, aren't aware of the survey, have got things that they wish to contribute. And I've said to them, well, you should fill out the survey. And they say, what survey? And I explain to them, you need to go to a website, blah, blah, blah. On it goes. So would the council consider extending the cut-off time for that? And I suppose as an adjunct, would we consider the same, considering it's such a busy time of year, everyone's running around like a headless chook at the moment, the open spaces strategy, which is also just open this month, closes at the end of this month.
Sure.
I don't know that it's the perfect time to have something like that open just for 1 month.
Sure.
So putting it out there, wait to hear the response. And I suppose I'm just asking that we take that into consideration. They're the two that, obviously they're critical. Getting feedback for those is quite critical, I think.
Yes, if you want, we actually can give you a little bit of an insight into the open space strategy from the acting CEO if you want.
Very good, thank
something
you.
just in this moment, just around timelines and.
I'm going to say we've got some tight timelines we're trying to work to. A month is considered appropriate. We've got over 500 respondents. That was at the end of last week. So I think in terms of engagement in the open space strategy, I think it's really strong. That's great. Got no issues extending the skating engagement for another couple of weeks.
Thank you, Chair.
Cool. Councillor Gibson.
Thanks. I did provide advice that I'd be asking this question. It pertains to the ongoing roadworks and the state of such on Hillside Crescent. From a non-technical perspective, i.e. my perspective, it appears the works have made the road, the pavement, the guttering worse and not better. So the questions are, where are we at? When will it be completed? And are we on budget, etc.?
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Acting General Manager.
Thank you for the questions, Councillor Gibson. So far to date, what we've done is we've made some improvements to the stormwater drainage infrastructure, the new curb and channel, and new road surface levels, and that's improved the road geometry as part of the design, and we've upgraded the guardrails. So that's what's been done to date. It's not been finished because we've deliberately pushed the new pavement and the ceiling works to mid-January because we're going to need road closures to do that, and we wanted to do that in a non-school period. So particularly for West Launceston Primary School and Sacred Heart Primary Schools, the work is scheduled to be completed by the end of February 24. So early February 24. So hopefully we'll get it done in that school break. My advice received is that to date the budget is in good shape. There is a bit of an unknown when we break seal on pavement. We won't know what we're going to find, so there's always a little bit of a risk there, but indications to date suggest ground conditions are suitable for the construction.
Great responses. Any further questions without notice? Councillor Harris.
Yes, just prompted by the response given for the pump track to Councillor Gibbs's written notice last time. I've been asked by a number of people, what happens if the river floods to your $500,000 investment at a pump track? Won't it just be washed away? Are you able to provide any feedback on how that might survive a flood or otherwise?
Sure. Well, I think that CEO will have more of an in-depth response to that, but this is the sort of infrastructure that is designed to be behind the levee. So, acting CEO.
Yeah, and I think why, of course, Invermay and on that side of the levee is impacted by flood. It's also, it's not an area we want to abandon either. So it's about placing the right and appropriate infrastructure there that can be made flood resilient. So we're mindful of the potential flood impacts. Not to say that it won't be impacted, but it's designed in a way that will minimise impact to the infrastructure when it does flood. But yeah, it's about activating an area with appropriate use and infrastructure.
Councillor Kai.
Question regarding that. I just thought when you're designing that is it called pump track. So it's sort of like designing pump track here, and then when we do get floods, is there any way of designing, say, like a cover or something that we can, when we start putting the levees up, just a thought, to cover that so that when the water does flow through, it goes over the cover and away so that it doesn't get all washed up and things like that? Just a thought, if possible.
Acting CEO.
So the infrastructure will be designed in a way that it can be inundated with water, so it'll be fine for the water to wash over the track.
14th December
2020. No more questions. Oh, Councillor Palmer.
Just one, if I can, on the progress of the Cataract Walk as we're headed towards Christmas. Any thoughts on that? Any updates on that for us? That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Acting General Manager.
Can I clarify that you mean the walkway itself and not the wall above? So works have absolutely started for the repair work. It's progressing quite well. I'm happy to provide you a bit more detail in a bulletin or an answer, a more fulsome answer if that would be preferable, but so far so good.
Councillor Kai.
Just regarding the close of the Cataract Gorge Walk, if walking back from here down Patterson Street, the sign on the right-hand side, when you say, like, you know how we've got where to, how far away it is, on the sign on the right-hand side, which is the TAFE side, there is a sign, and where it says Cataract Walk, it does say closed, but if the sign on the left-hand side of the street doesn't, it still says how far away it is to the Gorge Walk. So are we able to go and put the closed on there? Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, we'll have a look into that.
Yeah, yep, we can do that.
Cool. No more questions without notice. We'll move forward to agenda item number 14, which is committee reports. 14.1 is the Homelessness Advisory Committee meeting conducted on the 24th. The recommendation is that Council receives the report, and that's been moved by Councillor Walker, seconded by Professor Razo. Councillor Walker is the mover.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This meeting was, in fact, sort of out of cycle meeting, I suppose you'd say. It was called to discuss the by names list and to develop a committee response to the strategy around homelessness for 2024, and some of the details of that are listed in the agenda. Is he just trying to get back on course here? 14.1. The strategy was circulated and feedback was given. We're also being given assistance by Link Technologies in Launceston, who are assisting us in terms of building a way that we can collate data, both by allowing people affected to input their own data, as well as us being able to input data that we are given from the community. It might be where someone is living homelessly or otherwise, what services people require. But certainly the more data we collect, the better we are able to address the various issues, whether it's by age, by gender, whether it's the reasons why someone finds themselves in that situation. The more data such as that we have as a council, the more able we are to respond. That having been said, we have more recently spoken to someone who has experience of a similar process in South Australia that was administered partially by the South Australian government. And the difference, I suppose, being that they were able to use that data to identify people who would most likely not just benefit, but take advantage of the opportunity for housing, and therefore that placement would be more successful. The difference here being at the moment that housing doesn't always exist. So even when someone is identified as someone most likely to benefit immediately from being relocated, unfortunately, we don't have the places to relocate them. So that is something that we have to bear in mind, whether it's temporary housing or permanent, whether it's movable housing or otherwise. We just don't always have those options in Launceston at the moment. I know that federal and state governments are working towards solutions there, but nonetheless, in our current state, we do not have always those solutions. We have emergency shelter, we do not have permanent or temporary housing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Professor Councillor Raze.
I'd just like to add to Councillor Walker about how, and what she said, how difficult it is to gather data about people experiencing homelessness, and we see that in all around Australia and around the world. But I would like just to make comment how Launceston City Council have greatly achieved over this year, trying to address the problem of people experiencing homelessness. This has been massive increase in the work. For example, I remember like 3-4 years ago, they had probably like around 50 inquiries. To this year, at least 180 inquiries. And this is reflected by having now developed a strategy about how to address the issue. And I'd just like to congratulate Launceston City Council about all the work they are doing in addressing a very difficult problem. And hopefully we will all work together in trying to help people experiencing homelessness, especially at the time when people are really struggling with the cost of living. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, and I'd like just to endorse the work that's being done by council officers in the Homelessness Committee. I guess I just want to just throw a word of caution in relation to it. I just sense, and it's just a little movement in the dial as just to how community are actually dealing with it now. I think initially there was a lot of feeling for what was going on, but I think with some of our public parks and things like that now being seen more as a camping ground than a park for them to utilise, that we need to be really on top of our comms and how we're dealing with it. So I just really just profess that we just need to think about how we go out, because I just think that we might end up in a situation where there's some fatigue and therefore may get responses back that we don't really want to hear. And that's not to take away from one thing that we're doing, because I think we have dealt with all of these people with great empathy. I think we've dealt with issues as they've arisen with great efficiency as well. So no question about what we're doing. I just think just making sure that we're just thinking out there about how our community's feeling about it in general, and making sure that we're sort of ahead of the conversation rather than sort of having to deal with feedback which might not be as good as what we'd like to hear it, but just so that we're letting people know what we're doing very clearly. And I think we have to date, but just making sure that we maintain our communications in this area, because I think it's going to become a little more challenging as time goes by.
Further speakers? To close then, Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. I will take that opportunity to close and take on board the comments that were made around the table. Certainly communication, not just with people who find themselves homeless, which is part of council's opportunity, whether it's to communicate about where facilities are, what facilities are provided, but more importantly, in times of emergency, whether it be flood or otherwise, those communications are ongoing. Communication with the public, certainly the public has built more confidence in contacting the council, and the numbers certainly did increase as a result of that, and that's what's been reported to the committee, that we had an increase in the amount of people reporting issues regarding homelessness. What has improved is people's understanding and council's understanding, and I do agree with our deputy that we can always improve on that communication, but nonetheless, what has improved is the public's understanding that people who find themselves in that situation have rights too. They have a right to put a roof over their heads, whether that's a tent or otherwise, and that we have become more accepting of this phenomenon in our community. Tolerant, understanding. I can remember really just 12 months ago that that wasn't always the case. So I agree that we certainly have to continue pursuing that conversation with the community always. That this is a part of our community. It wasn't a part of our community go back a few years. Probably was, but we didn't notice it as much. Now it would appear as though attitudes have changed. People who find themselves in that situation are not hiding the fact that they're homeless. And in actual fact, what you will find is that there's other people who are travelling, who are now camping in places that you might not have done in the past either, because attitudes have somewhat changed. So just because you see a tent in a park doesn't necessarily always mean now that that person, it could mean that they are travelling from town to town. It's most likely that they are homeless, but we're not to make those assumptions. But we are to be understanding that the demographics have changed in our town, and that is what the committee is certainly dealing with, that communication between the various services and for us with our broader community. And to be able to make that information available for us to understand, let alone our community, means that we have to continue gathering that information any way we can. And that is where the by names list really begins, in understanding that data. Where it ends is providing solutions for those people who are on that list. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Putting it to the vote then, all of those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. 15 is Infrastructure and Assets Network. 15.1 is the Road Safety Centre Upgrade Budget Adjustment. The recommendation is that Council receives the project update and acknowledges the required budget adjustment required to complete the works for the Road Safety Centre Upgrade project at 1 Lawrencevale Road, South Launceston, and 2, notes that the budget increase will be funded through the Council receiving the Australian Government Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Grant, with the budget adjustment to occur in early 2024. Somebody to move? Councillor Walker. Seconder, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, and I thank staff for working through this. I know that this has been an ongoing issue, a situation for Launceston. I've been contacted numerous times by parents who would like to use the centre, who are waiting for the centre to open. We have had to delay that process. We have been on a long journey. I know we can come up with all types of reasons and excuses why this has happened. There have been contingencies that weren't always planned for in terms of what was required there, in terms of COVID, in terms of budgets that haven't met our expectations. But at this point that we find ourselves, I think it's important to finish this unique facility that we have. It will be bigger and better than ever when it's done. And it's great that money can be sourced, albeit that, this could have been perhaps money that could have been used somewhere else. In this instance, this is where that money is being used. We're committed to getting this done. And all I will say in recommending this for approval is that now we get it done with all haste and get it open as soon as possible in the new year. Thank you. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Gibson is the seconder.
Thanks so much. Just briefly, I too want to thank our officers for the detailed report, and moving forward, these are the kinds of reports that councillors will be expecting with a variety of projects. So this will be the template for how it'll be moving forward, no doubt. But with 633 responses at the time that the stakeholder engagement was undertaken pertaining to the Road Safety Centre, you can see what an important asset it is. And I expect, chatting with customer service staff, the desire to hold a birthday party at said facility would be as strong as it ever has been before, with lots of families waiting to hold a birthday party at the upgraded facility. So I support the words of Councillor Walker. I thank the multitude of officers who have worked on the project across departments to this stage, and look forward to it being finalised to the standard and to the hope that the 633 responders, and indeed our community, through the expectation of the front page not so long ago, brought about. And we look forward to celebrating all that we've achieved when it's opened in the not too distant future.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. A question, Councillor Harris.
Yes, just a question regarding the $1 million or thereabouts that we are getting from the Australian Government, Local Government's Community Infrastructure Grant. Clearly, had the Road Safety Centre not had been delayed and had more money required, what would this money have been spent on? So if you're like, we're doing this, what have we missed out on the other hand? Is there any projects that have been further delayed or otherwise?
Acting CEO.
So these grants have been coming through since COVID. It's an Australian government response to COVID to increase spending. One of the challenges we have with them is they come in and we've got short time frames to deliver projects. So typically in the past we've used the funding, we've taken projects that we were going to deliver that we've already budgeted and designed, and we haven't delivered that with council money, we've delivered it with grant funding, because we can't pick a new project up in the timeframes that are expected. So this grant funding wasn't identified for any projects yet, but it would have taken away some council funding, I guess, that we would have intended to be delivering. So it's not impacting any projects that we had identified.
Great. Councillor Mackenzie, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I stand to support continuing on with the project. I guess I also stand to express my disappointment that we've ended up with a situation where we have. And I guess to answer Councillor Harris's thing, it's the opportunity cost of what we might have been able to use it for is what we're losing with that money, but fortunately we have it and it's available to deal with this particular issue. But I also want to finish off on another note too. We might have lost on this and we need to go, and I think there's the commentary in there is a detailed report coming in regards to it to work out why. And some of the areas have been expressed in there, so I look forward to seeing that in the new year. But also just to note that it doesn't always go this way. Today we've actually saved in another area in our tenders where we're actually $1.2 billion better off than what we thought we were going to be in regards to a project. So I think just whilst we don't like these negative senses, it's nice to see that sometimes it goes the other way as well. So we do actually budget well and get outcomes which are favourable to our budget as well. So we just need to be mindful of that when we're looking at this. But again, like everything, we take this as an opportunity to sort of see how we can improve.
Further comments or questions around the table? Councillor Walker to close. Nothing further? Okay, putting it to the vote then. All of those in favour? That is all councillors present by absolute majority. That one passes. (16) is Organisational Services Network. 16.1, the lease of Brussels Street in Mowbray, 18 to 26. We have the recommendation, which is to consider leasing part of the property situated at 18 to 26 Brussels Street to the Northern Suburbs Community Centre and Starting Point Neighbourhood House. Now, this one is also by absolute majority, requiring 7. Somebody to move. Councillor Harris? A seconder? Councillor Gibson. Councillor Harris is the mover.
Thank you. Just a question before I start on this one. I just noticed that the diagram provided for the minutes has a connection, if you like, right up to Dover Street, where a access through to what I'll call the North East Rail Trail path that runs along the back of this property and past the Mowbray Golf Club up to Rachel Lee. They will then have access. The lease looks like it's intended to cover both the land that I assume they want to build the farm on, but also the access road as well. Will there be any changes to the access as a result of this lease?
General Manager?
Councillor Harris, if I could ask a point of clarification, you mean public access through to the...
Yes, yes.
There's no intention to be
So fundamentally they'll get access to the gate
Yes.
that exists there. There currently is a chicane, for lack of a better word, for cycles or others to get in through on the right-hand side as you look at it. Is that intended to stay, or will that be removed and perhaps a new gate and fenced-off area be built further down to give them some security over their site?
At the moment, the intention is for it to remain the same. Okay. If they have want to engage with us further about what that can look like in the future, if they have concerns about security, we'll certainly engage with them on that basis.
Yep, thank you. Now, I was just thinking about what the gardens and the Punch Bowl Reserve have fences, rather high fences all around them, and I suspect they might need to do something similar to stop other people gaining access to it. That was all. But very happy to move this motion to support the Northern Suburbs Community Centre with their farm project. They've been given over just on $500,000 over 5 years to make their long-held dream become a reality and provide low-cost vegetable boxes, but also turn them into meals for their community, as well as providing employment and skills to their volunteers in a not-for-profit manner. So I think this is a great project that is deserving of our support. I think it's called the Farm Project, and I think it will make a difference in that area for those who want to use the aforementioned rail trail, because it will clean up access and remove, I imagine, some trees and scrub that's along the border that will make it more open and therefore less places for people to hide is probably what I'm looking for. So I think it's a great use of the land, and I do wish them well in their endeavours to build what will be a great community garden up there at Mowbray. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson is the seconder.
Thank you. Just briefly, and I'll finish with a question. I think this will be transformative for the Northern Suburbs. It's a real shame that Councillor Dawkins wasn't able to be here today, because she would no doubt, far better than I, talk about the benefits that she and others have been advocating for so long with regard to social enterprises and the ability for us to really have an impact on food security or food insecurity. I want to congratulate the Northern Suburbs team. I think what they are now achieving, continuing to achieve on so little resource, but through the power of partnerships evidenced here through not only our partnership, but indeed the TCF, the Tas Community Fund, is amazing and needs to be celebrated at every opportunity. And I congratulate them and thank our officers for working with them to bring this to us and for us to play a small part. My question, though, is pertaining to the shipping container. It's my understanding from conversations with another councillor that another leased area that facilitates a men's shed at a particular part of the city is being discouraged from having a shipping container on site. And I note that it is their wish to install a shipping container for farm gate sales and or storage. So I'd like a position, please, on shipping containers, particularly for not-for-profit groups who are utilising our space for social enterprises or community undertakings.
General Manager.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Gibson. I unfortunately can't answer in detail because I have a sense that it may well relate to the zoning and planning, any planning requirements, depending on where the subject site is. And I'm certainly not an expert in that.
No, and nor am I. So I guess what I'm looking for today, is there a wish or a view from our officers, notwithstanding zoning specifications, that leased land or facilities would be discouraged, community groups would be discouraged from having a shipping container in order to best carry out their not-for-profit work.
Acting CEO.
So we don't have a policy position on that, and I think it needs to be considered on a case-by-case basis. Shipping containers, of course, provide cost-effective solutions for storage, and in the right location, that's fine. But they might not be suitable in all locations. So we will consider that on a case-by-case basis moving forward.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Any further speakers? Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair, and I do rise to support this particular endeavour. I wasn't particularly aware of the development of this, project on this particular site, even though it has been, since July last year that they did come to speak to council officers. And look, knowing the area as I do, you would call that land, fairly sort of unloved, unkept. And, you might say no man's land in a sense, in ways that it is treated, that I have seen it treated in the past, but that doesn't mean that we don't have a strategic, that it doesn't have strategic value. Here we've found the strategic value in this application, I suppose you could say, but long term we own quite a lot of land in the area. So I know that at the moment we are doing an assessment of Russell Plains Road, which is not far from this site, where we own significant amounts of land. We also own quite a few blocks in this particular area. Obviously, it's adjacent to the waste centre as well, or the recycling centre, if you wish to call it that. So it does make me think that rather than this piecemeal approach, which may or may not work, it may be very successful, and I wish it all the success in the world. It may be because of its location that it's also a failure. For whatever reason, we don't know. I wish it all the success in the world. I will vote to support for it today, but certainly what I want to encourage council on every corner, in every way, shape and form, that we develop strategic attitudes towards the assets that we have. I'm sure if Councillor Mackenzie was in the room and he's excused himself because of his involvement with the northern suburbs, he would be the first to say that yes, we have this long list of properties. We don't always have a particular purpose for them. And that would, I imagine, this land would probably fall in that category. It's not really attached to any other land that we have any use for. When at the times that I've been out there, I've seen it used as a dump, for want of a better term. Car tyres disappearing off into the distance, car tracks, I should say. So to see it being used and fenced, fantastic. Let's see that in the context of a greater plan for the area, a long-term plan, a 20, a 30, a 50-year plan for the area, which will include the end of the waste centre at some point, as we know. It will include the expansion of our city, whether that's through housing or other developments. So let's do that. And all the best to the Northern Suburbs Community Centre venture. And if this is successful, then let's incorporate that into that strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Professor Raze.
Thank you very much, and I also stand to support the farm project. I also congratulate the Launceston Council for supporting growing farming projects and look in the future at using every space in the city to encourage people growing vegetables and fruits, etc. But this has got special relevance to Australia. Why? Because a survey, Australian Bureau of Statistics survey in 2017-18 found only 10% of Australians now eat fresh vegetables like recommended, which is 5 served. I mean, that's just shocking compared to like 20 years ago. This sort of project is a way to increase the awareness of people, but by encouraging them to grow vegetables, that's the only way to encourage them to eat more vegetables when we provide them with fresh produce. And that will encourage even people using their garden to grow vegetables. So I'm hoping like in the future, in a few years time, we'll see more people interested in growing in their gardens, as well as expanding our community gardens. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments around the table? Councillor Harris to close.
Look, thank you, and thank you to all the councillors who spoke in support of this motion. And I just picked up the 24 Carrot Gardens presentation we had from Joanne Dean earlier today. And hopefully, once they've had it at their school, they will then be able to migrate down to the farm that will be down there at the end of Dover Street in Mowbray. And hopefully, whilst this lease is only for 5 years, perhaps could end up being a longer-term vision, as spoken about by Councillor Walker. So I look forward to everyone's support. Thank you.
Great. Okay, then, putting that one to the vote, then all of those in favour? That is all councillors present. The motion is carried, and we welcome back Councillor Mackenzie. 16.2 is intention to close part of Trevallyn Road. Is there any speakers to this from the public? There being none, we will look to the recommendation. The recommendation is that Council forms the opinion that approximately 74 square metres of the local highway in Trevallyn Road, subject to a historical building and fence encroachment and indicated in the hatched portion in the published agenda, should be closed because of lack of use, with the following conditions that are published in the agenda. Somebody to move. Okay, Councillor Walker to move. A seconder is Councillor Harris. Councillor Walker.
Thank you. And on the face of it, if you were to go past this property, you would probably believe that it was part of the property in question because of the nature, hilly nature, the divided nature of the road. Well, not the divided nature of the road, perhaps, but the land in question to the road, the level changes, if you like. And the original building has been in that location for more than 50 years. So if this change is successful today, then I doubt if anyone will see any difference. It will mean that council no longer has responsibility for a little tiny piece of land that we'd have somewhat difficulty accessing because it is attached to another property, or it is sort of servicing another property. So I do stand to support this recommendation that we do move in this direction and wait to see, subject to any formal objections being received, that this becomes something that transpires over the next few months. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Walker is the seconder. What did I say? Oh.
He's Walker, I'm Harris. That's good.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Harris is the seconder.
Thank you. Easily confused, yes. Yes, as Councillor Walker said, this is something that has been probably in place for many, many years, at least 50 odd, perhaps longer. And whilst we don't want to be in a habit of always selling off land when people encroach onto it, in this particular instance, it is pretty obvious how it seems to have happened. Someone's built their garage and they've then done some other changes around it, probably unbeknown because the layout of the street 50 plus years ago was probably slightly different and wasn't as well maintained and probably didn't have a footpath up that side as well. So it is something that we will continue to do on occasions, and we should treat each of these requests on their merit. It does not open slather for people to just start fencing off council-owned land to then say that's going to be mine in some years' time, nor will this actually impact on any residents of Trevallyn by the road closure, because it is not part of what is known as the Trevallyn Road and what people drive up and down, nor the footpath reserve. It is actually a piece of land that's a little bit off it. As I said, footpaths have been built to where the new, where to the front of the garage currently is located. Therefore, we aren't being inconvenienced by anything that we're doing here. So it really is just a common sense decision for us to approve this today.
Deputy Mayor.
I just, for public purposes, just really want to make the statement that I'm in favour of it on the basis that we have spoken to council officers about its future use, given the constrained nature of Trevellyn Road, you might sit there and think, well, why are we giving away a bit of road that we don't have much of anyway? But the reality of it is where it's situated isn't really got any future use, and we've tested that with our infrastructure officers. So just from the public's point of view to note that, you know, we have questioned and challenged whether that bit of road might be of use to us at some future expansion of Trevellyn Road, but we've been advised that this is not the case.
Further comments around the table? There being none, Councillor Walker, would you like to close? Nothing further? Okay, putting it to the vote then, all of those in favour. That is all councillors present. The motion is carried. Okay, 16.3. Next steps in expression of interest process 56 Frederick Street. Do we have any public speakers to this before we get to the recommendation? There being none, we will look to the recommendation, and that recommendation is, and please, if you'll excuse me for a moment as I do read the conditions of this one, recommendation that council notes the expressions of interests were received for the future use of 56 Frederick Street in Launceston. 2, determines that 56 Frederick Street, Launceston is not to be sold, and notes that because of this decision, expressions of interest that seek to buy the premises will now be excluded from further consideration. B, a lease in alignment with the City of Launceston's lease and licence policy is the appropriate mechanism for managing the ongoing use of 56 Frederick Street. And C, the remaining applications will be assessed against weighted criteria of community benefit, location fit for purpose, ongoing viable use, and activation of the site. Condition 3 for the recommendation is that requests that the CEO progress the expressions of interest process by providing the remaining applications with an opportunity to provide additional information. 2, the weighted criteria and questions around the structure of the entity and so forth. Deputy Gibson to move. Councillor Gibson to move. Councillor Walker to second. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you so much. And I thought that there would be a great deal of interest in us progressing this forward, and I know the seconder will no doubt support that notion. Thanks for reading out that there are 3 recommendations on the published copy. One was listed as 5, so I'm sure in the actual copy is the recommendation 1, 2 and 3. Just double checking. Yep, good. I want to stand to say thank you, first of all, to our community who have put forward a variety of different futures for this important site. I think through a number of processes, what's been demonstrated to me is the regard that our community has for this important site. Certainly it was brought to life through a number of newspaper articles, most specifically the feature undertaken by Julian Burgess from the Historical Society with regard to the past, and Councillor Walker obviously has been very passionate about us ensuring that that known value of the site is regarded in its future use. I want to thank the 16 groups that 16 parties that put forward a future use for the site. I think some of them got a bit excited because I saw some representatives who were here today. Importantly, though, I want to thank our officers who have, with us, been able to ensure that the next stage, that stage where the 13 remaining applications are asked to respond to a set of criteria, which ensures that at the next step, there is a process that has some rigour around it in terms of the weighting, the 4 criteria, each with a weight of 25%, which will enable us to assess the 13 remaining applications that are all really valid, that are all that show insight, that show passion, that in many cases demonstrate great work that's happening by those parties with regard to our Launceston. So I note that they've got until the 1st of February to respond. I expect that by this stage next week, obviously council officers will have written to them letting them know the formal process, whether that's an online Smarty Grants model. Obviously, we do that really well in other avenues of council, or indeed if they need to respond in paper with those 4 criteria. But we look forward, I look forward to receiving even more of the good work that was outlined with the uses that this site could be used for in the future. And I want to thank those groups that perhaps are run entirely by volunteers that have taken the time to put forward a vision. We understand that it takes time and resource to do these things. Hopefully the 4 criteria will allow future parties to be able to really consolidate their thinking in a way then that councillors will be able to, through a uniform, fair process, assess more wholly their vision for the future use of that important site.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I did wish to speak to this issue, to this consideration today and this recommendation. 1836, Governor George Arthur was still the Governor of Tasmania. We're talking about our deep colonial history because, you know, a year before, Manalagenna, the great northeastern tribal chief, was still walking freely on this land. This is the time that we're talking about, the time in our history books that we read about in Tasmania, our Lutruwita. So to have the custodian of this building that was finished and completed in 1836, but certainly commenced before then, and for it to have that continuous community use, for it to be gifted to Launceston City Council during that use, and for us to have looked after it up until this present day, is a marvellous thing. It's something that we should be extremely proud of. Indeed, the response from the community when we started to discuss the future of this building showed the pride that the community have in that building. The amount of people that came forward to talk about their experiences with the building, people who brought me pictures and pamphlets, booklets about the prior use. And as my previous speaker mentions, the applications for the expressions of interest that we've had certainly ignite the imagination. Now, not all of these ideas would necessarily fit perfectly into a council process of assessing what meets our strategies for the future. Indeed, probably some of them don't do that, but that's not to say that they shouldn't be considered, because what we see here is the community seeing an opportunity to continue a use for the building that engages the broader community. And we don't necessarily want something that conforms to what we've already done in the past, but something that ignites our imagination for the future. So I know that there are a number of submissions that follow that path. I'd love to have that community discussion about those ideas. And in the future, when this is done and dusted, I think the council will be left with a number of ideas that we should look for further opportunities where we could engage with those providers, because that's the type of development that this opportunity gives. For people to come forward with ideas, they can see that if they can have a community home for their idea, then that idea can flourish. I know that we own halls in various parts of Launceston, and people can hire them out, quite reasonably priced as well. But it's different when an organisation, a community-based organisation, has a home where the community learns where they can access that group and where that group can grow and flourish. And I think that's what's attractive about this. I know that we are a process-driven organisation, and I'm somewhat frustrated that the process has to take this time, but this is where we find ourselves. What I will say is that I highly recommend to the table that we accept this, and I encouraged that the council has determined that 56 Frederick Street is not to be sold. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Further comments around the table? There being none, Councillor Gibson, would you like to close?
Very, very quickly, I do think it's appropriate to recognise that we have achieved an outcome that was desirous through a subsequent notice of motion. And so I think it is appropriate to commend the advocacy and the passion that a councillor put into that advocacy work. We've nonetheless reached the same goal: the promotion, the advocacy, the publicity and the regard that Councillor Walker speaks about has come through some of that notice of motion work, and credit where credit is due. Councillor Walker has passionately advocated for that. Through the process that we committed to, that we backed and we supported, we have achieved the same outcome. I'm pleased that's the case. I'm sure Councillor Walker is pleased, as he said, if not frustrated, but I think the outcome will be outstanding for our community. Thank those organisations who have so far put their heart and soul into those parties that have put forward an application. I thank them for that, and I look forward to them unpacking just a little further with a structured process, 4 questions, how they can take that initial expression of interest to the next level.
Thank you, councillors. Putting it to the vote then, all of those in favour? That is all councillors present. The motion is carried. 16.4 is the Launceston Central Marketing Corporation Annual Report. The recommendation is that council receives the report, and it's been moved by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Harris. Councillor Gibson.
Just briefly, continuing what I said last meeting, it's wonderful, I think, when we are expending so many dollars to the wonderful, worthy work of an organisation such as Launceston Central Marketing, that we report adequately the achievements and the undertaking that organisation has delivered upon. And as I said at last meeting, delivered they have in spades, essentially recreating themselves, setting forward all the destinational marketing activity, bringing a number of events and activations to the city, but most importantly for me, working like never before with our organisation to ensure that the work is systematic, it's strategic, and it's hand in glove in line with strategies such as our event strategy, our tourism strategy, our support of gastronomy, and the work that we are collectively trying to achieve. So I want to commend the not-for-profit organisation, the volunteers on the board under the leadership of Monica, and indeed commend the outstanding work of the staff under the effervescent and highly capable Amanda.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson. Councillor Harris is the seconder.
Yes, Councillor Gibson didn't leave me much more to say. I only wanted to just say that it's a great first year of operation on what will be a transitional period as the council funding as collected by the rates decreases for our central city ratepayers, and then it will all be funded out of the general rate. And I guess with that comes the responsibility to ensure that all of Launceston benefits and not just those in the central city. And we had a recent example where the school athletics was out at St Leonard's, which had some 600 families arrive. They all ate in restaurants, they all drove rental cars, they stayed in hotels. All of that benefits the whole city. And so it is really important that we do have a fully coordinated effort to make sure that when events do come to the city, that we leave the people who come very satisfied, so much so that they become advocates for our city when they return home. And the efforts of Launceston Central will certainly do that. I know that they perhaps missed the mark or dropped the ball on that one with the athletics because it fell through some gaps, but that is able to be addressed and going forward. And if you don't learn from your mistakes, you're destined to repeat them. And I have no doubt that Amanda will not miss another opportunity like that and make sure that we have a really great outcome. So I look forward to what this will do for the city, and I think ultimately it will probably make other cities look at what their marketing efforts are, because they really are driven to great outcomes. I think it's a great first year for the new Launceston Central.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Professor Raze.
Well, I would like also to congratulate the Launceston Central for all the hard work they've been doing to promote our city. Perhaps I would like, just for the future marketing, please don't forget our seniors. Looking at the brochure, I see all these lovely young faces, but perhaps we should think, what about our seniors? We would like to bring them to the city. Do you know that in Tasmania, like 22, we have the highest proportion of people over the age of 65. That's like 22%. And I think we should try to attract them and market them as well. So thank you very much for all the hard work they have been doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair, and just to rise to thank Amanda and the team and their work that they have done to take it to this level. They're using our word brand. I think it's probably the most successful example of use of our word brand at the moment. They've made it look very sophisticated in all the work that they've done, and to the board. And you might say, yes, I did vote against the idea that we should move it to the general rate base. I thought that really this is, a promotion for the central city. I think my mind has somewhat shifted there, but I will say you could say that, moving it to the general rate base means that it should be providing benefits for the broader Launceston. But I think the reason that we did that was the argument that a vibrant CBD brings benefits to the broader Launceston, and I think that is the driver behind this, that a vibrant CBD will always bring greater benefits across the board. Launceston Central, congratulations, and great work, keep it up. Thank you.
Further comments around the table? Councillor Gibson to close.
Look, I think Councillor Walker summed it up perfectly when he said that a strong core brings benefit and recognition, reward, and return to the whole municipality. I look forward to seeing the media release that celebrates our connection, our support, our engagement with CityProm, who so successfully have delivered so many strategic partnerships with us. And I'm sure, thank you. And I'm sure that they will continue to grow, to evolve, and strategically be aligned with us into the future.
Thank you. Okay, putting it to the vote then, all of those in favour, that is all councillors present, the motion is carried. 17 is Chief Executive Officer Network. 17.1 is Report on Council's 23 Annual General Meeting. The recommendation is that in respect to the Annual General Meeting, the Council notes the following motions passed at that meeting, which were the confirmation of minutes, and it received the reports. So just looking for somebody to move. Councillor Harris, a seconder. Councillor Britton. Councillor Harris.
It's all written down for us. We had our annual general meeting. We're confirming the minutes from the previous one back in December 22, and we had a good update provided by our acting CEO on the annual report for 22-23. And really, that's all we have to do.
Councillor Britton?
Just to say, good job to Shane and the team down at the QV Mag as well. And their report.
Fantastic. Any further comments to the annual report? Anything further to close? Councillor Harris? Okay, putting it to the vote then. All of those in favour? That is all councillors present. The motion is carried. 18, we look to closed council. So the recommendation is that council moves into closed council to consider the following matters: confirmation of minutes, proposed sale of land in Trevelyan Road, and the Road Safety Centre at 18.3. So do I have somebody to move that we move into closed council? Councillor Palmer, seconded by Councillor Harris. All of those in favour? That is all councillors present. Council moves into closed session. Okay, councillors, as we re-enter open session, may I please have somebody to move that the table of contents displayed is correct record? Okay, Councillor Harris, and seconded, Councillor Britton. All of those in favour? That is all councillors present. The motion is carried. 19, meter closure. Next council meeting date. The next ordinary meeting will be held at 1 p.m. on the 25th of January. Is that correct? 25th of January 24 at the council chambers here at Town Hall in St John Street. Enjoy a break, councillors. Refresh, recharge.